website and the Sky News app. Kate's going to be here in a few moments with all the day's top stories.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Morning, everybody. 7 o'clock coming up on today's programme for you. The UN warns that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon, calls for an immediate ceasefire as Israel prepares to invade.
Plus, in politics here, the row over donations that won't go away. Now, Sir Keir Starmer's accused of pretending that Lord Ali's luxury penthouse was his own home during a COVID Christmas message.
And 8 pharmacies closing every week. We'll hear a warning that some areas are being left as pharmacy deserts.
It's Thursday, the 26th of September. The United States, the UK and the EU issue a joint statement calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the border between Israel and Lebanon.
Neither side has officially responded to this proposal, but Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has left here to fly to New York to speak at the General Assembly. US officials say there could be a response within hours.
Also ahead, the sentencing of two 12-year-old girls found guilty of murder in a random attack with a machete in Wolverhampton begins this morning. Bragging about an abduction, the haunting claims about the prime suspect in Madeleine McCann's disappearance. Keir Starmer tells Sky News he took free accommodation from a Labour donor to protect his family. And meet the laughing elephant seal. We'll show you some of the best images from this year's Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards. Good morning. The United Nations has warned that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. The United States, the UK and other allies have issued a joint statement calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire as Israel prepares for a possible ground invasion. US officials say they expect a temporary pause to be agreed in the coming hours, but so far there's been no official response from Israel or Hezbollah. In a moment, we'll get the latest from Alistair Bunkle in northern Israel, but first, our special correspondent Alex Crawford reports from southern Lebanon.
South Lebanon is being hammered by Israeli airstrikes. There are a few places here where residents feel safe now. A residential block on the outskirts of Tyre is still burning as we turn up. It's one of hundreds attacked by Israeli forces during another intense day of bombing. The Israeli army chief says strikes like these are preparations for a possible ground assault into Lebanon.
Allahu Akbar.
Rhetoric or not, for residents in places like Nabatea, the war is all around. They targeted right next to us, he's saying. And this is the second. And this is the third. The emergency services are struggling to keep pace. There's no let-up in the airstrikes, the killing, wounding and terror.
We're still seeing lots of people on the move. There is a huge migration of people out of the area that's being targeted by the Israelis, and all along we're seeing evidence of airstrikes. The whole area around here is peppered by them.
Hezbollah is being relentlessly pursued, but it's coming at a cost to civilians who are in the way. Whole families are missing, with little time to search. And these two little sisters are among the dozens killed in another deadly day for the country. As parts of Lebanon came under sustained attack, Hezbollah's refusing to back down, claiming to fire its first ballistic missile at intelligence headquarters near Tel Aviv, which was intercepted by the Israelis. The ever-escalating situation is causing a growing humanitarian crisis, with hundreds of schools turned into shelters and thousands reliant on scarce aid. Lebanon's Social Affairs Minister didn't want to talk to us about it, nor to those in the shelter. He was heckled by those who've recently fled their homes and feel they're getting no help. One traumatized mother said she'd fled with her 5 children hours earlier. There's a lot of destruction. People died, houses got destroyed, the roads were blocked, she said. There's no more bread, no more food, no more water. But the Israeli airstrikes are going on through much of the night as well as the day now. This was close to the Lebanese-Italian hospital. And there's no end in sight to this right now. Alex Crawford, Sky News in southern Lebanon.
Well, perhaps a temporary ceasefire in sight. Alistair, what more do we know? I think you're in Haifa this morning, aren't you? Haifa, forgive me.
Well, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any let-up in the Israeli activity. I can hear fighter jets overhead right now. Actually quite notable that there haven't been any air raid sirens across Israel for around 18 hours now. That doesn't mean that Hezbollah has not fired into Israel. If they use anti-tank missiles, they take a trajectory that is so flat that they don't set off the air raid sirens. But, you know, still a reasonably significant passage of time where there has been some sort of lull in Hezbollah's attacks on Israel. So there is hope coming out of the United States that this pause in fighting, I don't think we should probably go as far to call it a ceasefire as such, but a pause in fighting could be agreed between the two sides. And it's been endorsed, well, it's been put together by the US and the French. The French obviously have considerable historical influence within Lebanon itself. And it's been endorsed by the EU, by the G7, Australia, and a number of countries in the region here, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, I think. So it's got some weight behind it. And now it will be a case of trying to convince the two sides that this is in their own interest. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, has left here and flown to New York to address the General Assembly. I think that's quite significant in itself, because last night there was some rumours that a ground invasion was imminent, for example. I can't see the Israeli Prime Minister leaving Israel and going to the US if a ground invasion was only hours away. So I guess Netanyahu will use his time in New York, and others will use his time whilst he's there, to try and convince him that a pause should take place. And we will see whether US officials are right. They reckon there could be responses within the coming hours. So the coming hours will be important.
OK, for now, thank you. Now to the row over donations and gifts that won't go away. So Keir Starmer has been accused of suggesting that Lord Ali's luxury penthouse was his own home in a COVID Christmas message in December of 2021. At the time, there were strict rules in place to prevent the spread of the virus.
At times like this, we must all put the national interest first and play by the rules. Of course, I understand that sticking to the rules can be inconvenient, but stick to the rules we must. It would be easy to let the festivities we've all been looking forward to divert us from our national duty. Getting jabbed, wearing masks, and working from home if we can really will help prevent infections and help prevent the NHS being overwhelmed.
And what a beautiful home he has, Darren.
It's just not his, is it? That's the problem, Kay. It's extraordinary. We started with sunglasses, with glasses. We did suits. Now we're very much onto homes in this story that Downing Street seemingly cannot get rid of. This story relates, as you say, back to 2021, in which Keir Starmer was encouraging people to work from home while actually being in someone else's house. This is Lord Ali's penthouse, worth, we reckon, around £18 million in central London. I think there's two questions about it. First of all, why? Why did he feel he needed to record that message from there? And second of all, why did he pretend it was his home? You may have noticed there are actually pictures of his family in the shelf behind them. Why didn't he make it clear that he was somewhere else? Now, Downing Street denying any rules around COVID have been broken this morning. There were restrictions in place, but you were allowed to move around. But this is on top of course, Keir Starmer having access to Lord Ali's home during the general election campaign. Now, he's defended that, bringing his family into it, as essentially saying that it was necessary for his son's GCSEs. But as I say, it comes back to this fundamental question about why is this necessary? Why did he need these donations from Lord Ali? Let's have a listen to the exchange he had with Beth yesterday in New York.
I wasn't going to let my son fail or not do well in his GCSEs because of journalists outside our front door.
Do you see how it looks to some people?
Well, I think that's why the rules are there, to declare it. But look, every day...
Do you get it, though?
Every day...
Do you get how it looks?
If you're putting to me, Beth, that I should have stayed in my Kentish Town home and disrupted my son's GCSEs, that was the right thing to do, then I think you should put that to me.
So I think what Beth was getting at there, is the hypocrisy, if you like, to a degree, in the sense that, you know, many people feel, and the Conservatives pointed out this morning, that they were hauled over the coals when it came to, you know, high standards within government, donations, talk about hypocrisy by the then leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, and now he essentially seems to have, you know, potentially not necessarily broken any rules, but taken donations that actually don't reflect necessarily very well on him. So, you know what? I think this is a story that Downing Street are going to try and get on top on. Every single day there seems to be new angles to it. It is one of the reasons I think his poll ratings are down. I mean, he's now in the same category, I think, almost as Liz Truss in terms of net ratings. Can he move on from this? Can he answer the questions about why this was all necessary? It's a story, as I say, irrespective of the big international news affairs that have been dogging him, irrespective of where he is.
Yeah, he needed to be there for his son's GCSEs. He stayed on a month after the GCSE period had ended. Make of that what you will. Thank you very much. Rest of today's top stories?
Yes, good morning. I want to turn attention to US politics now because New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted after federal corruption investigations into his administration. It's unclear what the charge or charges he's facing, as the indictment is currently sealed. He'll become the first sitting mayor of New York City to face criminal charges. Mr. Adams, though, vowing not to resign, claiming the investigation is based on lies.
I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
A catastrophic hurricane is expected to hit Florida today and move far inland. The National Hurricane Center in the United States warning it's likely to bring strong winds and could reach Category 4 strength by this evening. Schools have been closed and officials have declared emergencies in both Florida and Georgia. The Ministry of Justice is still looking for a handful of prisoners freed by mistake during the emergency release scheme earlier this month. The measure was used to free up space across overcrowded prisons, 37 people mistakenly being released. Authorities still searching for 5, including one person accused of reoffending. UK's last remaining coal-fired power station will shut at the end of the month. Ratcliffe-on-Soar's been generating electricity since 1968, occupying a prominent spot in the East Midlands skyline. At its peak, it was able to produce power for 2 million homes. Wet weather set to continue, with the Met Office issuing a series of yellow weather warnings for large parts of the United Kingdom. The warnings indicate heavy rain, which could cause disruption. It covers much of England and Wales, apart from North Wales and parts of the West Midlands and the northwest of England, and is in place until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
The sentencing of two of the UK's youngest ever knife killers will begin this morning. 2 12-year-olds were convicted for the murder of Sean Ciachet in Wolverhampton with a machete. Becky has more for us in just a second, but first here's her report.
I'm out with a specialist task force from West Midlands Police. It's the last day of the school term. A call's come in. A young boy with a weapon. This is what they find. This region has replaced London as the knife crime capital of the UK, and those carrying weapons are getting younger. Sean Ciachet was murdered by 2 12-year-old boys in Wolverhampton in a random and unprovoked attack. They stabbed him several times with a machete. I've come to his home in the Caribbean to speak exclusively to his younger sister, Shanna.
The same day that he passed away, he had called me in school. I was in school, and he called me during break time, and he had asked me how I was and stuff like that. And that was the last day he told me that he loved me.
This is one of the children who killed Sean, posing with his machete across his chest.
It was shocking because wow, 12-year-olds, it doesn't make sense. It's just really crazy. It's an unforgivable act that kids would have done. You should know what's right and what's wrong. As 12 years old, you should know what's right and what's wrong.
Shanna is haunted by her brother's brutal killing.
Especially at night, I just think about it into detail, and there's times that I would just be in my bed and just cry about it.
The boys who murdered Sean are the youngest ever knife killers in the UK. Back in Wolverhampton, I've met up with one of their friends.
It was just shocking. I thought he was going to grow up and be a basketballer or something. I never expected him to do something like that. The other one was just naughty. He was bad breed.
He's 14. He tells me he's been targeted by rival gang members and it's made him want to carry a knife.
People carry knives because there's a fear factor, to protect yourself, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Knives are destroying lives in the West Midlands, but violence is a daily reality here. And young people aren't prepared to give up their weapons.
Becky, as I said, is here with us. How old was this child?
So the killers in this case were 12 years old, so they are the youngest ever knife killers in the UK. And when you think about the fact that they had gone out with a machete and were prepared to use it, even though it seems that Sean Ceasefire did not provoke them in any way, what were they doing? I mean, it seems that they had it as some kind of status symbol. One of the children who owned the knife had posed with it and put photos on Snapchat. But the fact that they were willing to use it for no reason that we can see is just shocking.
It is. And of course, there's an extended version of your report, isn't there, online and indeed throughout the day here on Sky News. So young gangs of Wolverhampton watch the special report, as I said, right across the day here on Sky News from Becky. And in addition to that, it will be online. A German court has heard the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case boasted he'd abducted a young girl in Portugal in a story similar to the 2007 disappearance. Shaman is here with us. What more do we know?
Well, we know that Christian B is currently on trial for unrelated charges which include rape and also exposing himself to children. But Christian B is also one of the prime suspects in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and he became the prime suspect back in around 2020. It was during this time that he shared a cell with a Romanian national called Laurenti Coden, and this Coden is now in court claiming that Christian B had told him stories which resemble some of the details of the night that Madeleine McCann disappeared. Excuse me. So, for example, he claims that Christian B had told him that he'd been in an area in Portugal where there were very affluent hotels where rich people were staying, and that on one occasion he entered the window of one of these hotels looking for money but didn't find any money. He instead found a child and took that child with him. Coden also claims that Christian B had spoken about a few hours later the fact that police and dogs had surrounded the area that he'd been staying in, but had claimed that Christian hadn't ever told him that he had killed any children. He does suggest, though, that Christian B had asked him suspicious questions about evidence, for example, whether DNA evidence could be taken from bones that had been buried underground, for example. However, the defendant's lawyer disputes all of these claims, saying that the witnesses are contradicting each other and that the evidence is new evidence that's never been heard before. It comes after 17 years now of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. It was back in 2007. She was only 3 years old. And looking at some of the suggestions from the defendant's lawyer, it seems that prosecutors may not be any closer to proving that Christian B had anything to do with Madeleine McCann's disappearance.
OK, for now, thank you. Thanks a lot. In other news, the UK is among several nations calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border to allow for negotiations to take place. Joined now by former Defence Minister and Defence and Security Analyst Tobias Ellwood. Hello to Mr Ellwood. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. It does look as though potentially there is a ceasefire in the pipeline. What might that achieve?
Well, this call for 21-day pause, ceasefire, is certainly welcome. It's necessary. But is Israel, is Hezbollah, indeed is Iran listening? Israel does look set to invade southern Lebanon. So it does look like the Middle East is still sliding towards war, which neither side will benefit from. The backdrop to this is Hezbollah, who's miscalculated, I think, jumping on so quickly to support Hamas after its barbaric attacks last October by increasing those rocket attacks in the north of Israel, forcing 60,000 or so Israeli civilians to be evacuated. It's that that's triggered Israel's response with the assassination of Hezbollah's military chief and those recent pager and walkie-talkie attacks. And now those missile strikes on Hezbollah's launch sites themselves across southern Lebanon. But it's the scale of missile strikes on both sides, hitting civilian areas, that's prompted the UK government to tell Britons to leave, but also demonstrating how this conflict is getting out of control. That's prompted this 21-day pause, a call for a ceasefire. But as I say, is anybody in the Middle East actually listening to this?
As far as Israel is concerned, they say they have right on their side because of the internationally recognised demilitarised zone in southern Lebanon up to northern Israel. Do they have a point?
They do have a point, but it's a question of how you utilize your superior military might, because this is the combination of factors that's causing this almost perfect storm of instability with no country, no stakeholder, not even Israel, in control of events. Israel uses that military might to try and defeat Hamas in Gaza, but we're still absent of any ceasefire there, let alone a long-term strategy for peace. And Hezbollah's involvement has opened up this second front. But will Iran step in if its most valued proxy, Hamas, is seen to be losing? And where is America in all this? Could they not be more influential? And of course, it then takes us to the United Nations, where world leaders are gathering today. That's paralyzed because, of course, behind Iran sits Russia, and Russia will veto any sensible resolution. But Israel does seem intent on attacking, on that land invasion. But to what end? Where will that take you, given the fact that Hezbollah, I beg your pardon, is committed to continuing its fight against Israel because of the absence of a ceasefire back in Gaza?
Do you believe that Hezbollah isn't using its full force right now, has been suggested?
Not at all. Not at all. It's the most heavily armed, well-trained, non-state actor in the world. And there's a big question there for the West. How did we allow Hezbollah to get to the state, to be so powerful, to run a shadow state in Lebanon in the way it does today? And the same could be said for Hamas and indeed the Houthis as well. Their influence over the Middle East, all supported by Iran, that we've gifted to them the ability to cause such instability that we see today. But more immediately, we need to secure that elusive ceasefire in Gaza. And secondly, stability in northern Israel, where, more positively, there is already an older resolution, UN Resolution 1701, mandating the withdrawal of Hezbollah forces to north of the Litani River. That's about 30 kilometers in. That's a baseline, perhaps, for which discussions could now begin.
And how would you expect Iran to respond to all of this?
As I say, this is absolutely key. They are concerned that they're going to lose their influence over the Middle East, but we're absent of an Iranian strategy, and this complicates matters completely. It's curious that President Zelensky was hoping to use New York as his big opportunity to persuade the West to secure or provide those long-range weapon systems that we've spoken about many times. And instead, it's been the Middle East that's dominated matters. But now those two conflicts, incidents, challenges for the West are now interlinked because of Russia and indeed its growing relationship with Iran.
We've heard that Benjamin Netanyahu has left Israel in order to speak at the UN General Assembly in New York, whereas, of course, as we know, many of the world leaders have gathered, including our own leader and indeed, as you said, President Zelensky, President Biden as well. Would that suggest that there will not be a ground invasion into Lebanon while he is out of the country?
Well, that's an operational decision. It doesn't always work that way. You'd think that he'd want to be there if that does happen, but he might deliberately use that as a backdrop in order to deter, thinking, as we're discussing, that it shouldn't happen. The importance of him being in New York is, I think, useful because it's the back-channel conversations, the bilaterals that can actually take place. This is where you could persuade Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel to reconsider, but that he will then call for Western support. Israel's quite right to defend itself, but has come under huge criticism in the way that it's used its military force. To what end? What does victory look like? What is the strategy to take us there? That, I'm sure, will be discussed in the UN during the next few days.
As far as Zelensky is concerned, just before I let you go, and Ukraine, President Zelensky would have us believe that victory is potentially almost upon him. It would suggest from what I'm reading that it's actually still a long way off.
Oh, it is a long way off. And it's so crucial that we give him the equipment that he wants. We talk about supporting Ukraine, giving them all that they need, but we're not. We place these caveats on these long-range weapon systems. I should stress that America has come under a lot of grief, quite rightly, because they haven't provided the attacker missiles. But Germany, Taurus missiles, is that their forte? That's what they've got. They could provide those immediately, and they've not done so. So we must be pressurizing Germany, as well as the United States, to liberate the ability for us to be able to provide Storm Shadow and the French Scalp missiles as well. Let's give Zelensky the equipment that he needs so he can secure his victory.
OK, it's always great to talk to you, Mr Elwood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking at the weather for you now here on Sky News, Thursday morning. Rain clearing southward through the day. It will leave the country in a cold northerly flow, which will remain through the weekend until a further storm system arrives later on Sunday. This morning, rain over Northern Ireland and Northern England will become slow-moving, with the potential to see some significant rainfall totals, localised flooding and travel disruption. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, as the UK's youngest ever knife killers prepare for sentencing. We discuss what leads young people to carry weapons. We'll look at the impact of pharmacy closures on rural communities. What does it mean for you? And a praying otter and a fox with the zoomies. We take a look at this year's Comedy Wildlife Photography finalists.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast. It's starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, why the Midlands, West Midlands in particular, has overtaken London as the worst place in the country for knife crime. We speak to an activist, but first...
Our top stories for you this morning. The United Nations has warned that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon as the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel escalates. Countries including the UK, US and France have called for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border to allow for broader negotiations. The Prime Minister has defended accepting a £20,000 donation for the use of a flat during the election. Keir Starmer told Sky News that journalists outside his house made it difficult for his son, who was taking his GCSEs at the time, to concentrate. A court in Germany has heard claims that the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann bragged about abducting a small child. A former cellmate of Christian B, whose surname cannot be published due to German privacy laws, said he was told a story which resembled the night when the 3-year-old went missing. Christian B currently on trial for a range of non-related sex offences committed in Portugal. And 2 boys will face sentencing over the murder of 19-year-old Sean Ceasefire in Wolverhampton. They were just 12 years old when they carried out the attack with a machete.
Let's get more on that story, should we? The West Midlands is the worst area in the UK for knife crime. But what's driving young people into gangs at such a young age? Joined now by the Chief Executive of Activating Creative Talent, Teswell White, a company which aims to put children and young people at the centre of their work. Hello to you, Teswell. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about the work that you do.
Thank you there. So we're a youth development company, essentially, also a training organisation. So we support probably around 400 young people across the West Midlands. We do like detached youth work. We also support young people through schools with social emotional learning. And this is really kind of essential, really, for young people, that they get the critical support that they actually need.
Why do you think the West Midlands is the worst knife crime rate in the whole of the UK?
I don't try to kind of pay attention to, whether the statistics are kind of going up for West Midlands, down for West Midlands. Really, we're dealing with issues around deprivation. And so across the country where there is deprivation, we have the result of youth violence.
Does social media regulation have a role to play, do you think?
I think we've all got a role to play, including social media. So, whether we're talking about, practitioners that are on the ground, the government in terms of deploying the right amount of resources, social media in terms of, banning content, explicit content that really young people really shouldn't be exposed to, and the media, of course. So we have a lot of fear amongst our young people. A lot of our young people want to drive towards trying to protect themselves. And the result of that, when they're coming up in impoverished communities, deprived communities, where there is no access to youth workers, resources to support their emotional and their social development, the result is problematic for us.
Are young people right to be fearful?
Are they right to be fearful? I think fear is, something that takes control of humans in terms of just, controlling our responses. And so it's something that we need to control. And social media could be, is one of the issues that is driving that.
What message do you have for young people who are considering carrying a knife?
So it's definitely not to carry a knife, but we've got to go beyond just simple messages of not carrying a knife. We've got to support young people so they actually feel that they don't have to carry a knife.
What did you think about the amnesty for the zombie knives that's just ended?
So the amnesty for the zombie knives, again, these are just one of a number of issues, but are we really penetrating the issues? Are we getting into the issues that drive young people to carry knives in the first place, that drive young people into serious youth violence and what we're calling gangs in the first place? Those are the initiatives that really need to be addressed.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you very much indeed, Teswell.
Thank you.
Ukraine is under increasing pressure from Russian forces in the eastern city of Pokrovsk. The city is the main supply hub for Ukrainian forces defending the region, and they have told Sky News that to hand on, they need permission to strike deep inside Russia with Western missiles. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi reports from Pokrovsk.
The city of Pokrovsk in the Donbass is well and truly in Moscow's sights. As we drive in, it is almost deserted. There are some cars on the road, most are military or emergency workers. Vladislav and Victor from the local fire and rescue are now being called out every day. They show us a building that was hit in an artillery strike. Russian forces are getting closer and everyone is at risk.
Yesterday our vehicle was hit by enemy fire. It was targeted by a so-called FPV drone. Fortunately, our rescuers were unharmed.
Further down the road and another building is on fire. Everything here is in range of Russia's guns.
We are on the outskirts of Pokrovsk here. Russian positions are just over here, not far, just a matter of kilometers. And this building has just been hit. It's in a residential area by a shell. You can see now the emergency responders just arriving to try and put out the blaze.
Most people have left, but those that remain are frightened.
People don't matter to anyone. We don't matter to anyone. How many of us are even left here? They've turned this place into a dead city.
In the centre, we meet Ludmila. She tells me she has nowhere else to go as shells whistle over the city. Pokrovsk is continually under fire now because it is strategically important. It's why its bridges and roads are being targeted. This place is a supply hub for Ukrainian troops, but they are struggling to defend it. We are taken by the military to an artillery position. As we drive, they keep an electronic jammer close at hand. It is a defense against Russia's kamikaze drones. The soldiers here are often firing many rounds a day, but the enemy's creeping advance is relentless. The men say they need better weapons and permission to strike deep into Russia with Western missiles.
The enemy increases their production every day. For example, ammunition and FPV drones. So we need to destroy all of that, along with their supply routes.
As this European war enters its third winter, it is clear Vladimir Putin will keep throwing men and weapons into the fight. Ukraine is managing to slow the advance, but without more help from the West, the troops wonder how long they'll be able to keep up this defence. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Eastern Ukraine.
Vladimir Putin has warned that Russia could use nuclear weapons if it's attacked by another state, even if the attack was conducted with conventional missiles. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett is standing by for us now. Not the first time he's said this, is it?
No, it's another warning, yet another nuclear warning from Vladimir Putin to the West. But this one is more specific than previous ones, though. So as President Zelensky was addressing the UN, President Putin here was addressing his Security Council about changing Russia's nuclear doctrine, which is the document that defines when and how Russia could use nuclear weapons. Currently, it states that they can be used if the security of the state is at risk, which is quite a nebulous concept, of course. Now Vladimir Putin has said he wants to change that and be more specific so that to allow Russia to respond with nukes to an attack by any state using conventional weapons. So, for example, drones, missiles and aircraft. And that's not all. He also said that Moscow would consider any assault from a non-nuclear power that's supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. And you don't have to be a military genius to understand that he was referring there to Ukraine being supported by NATO. It was a very thinly veiled warning indeed. So why is he saying this now? It's all a response to this issue being mulled by the UK and the US still over whether or not to allow Ukraine to use Western weapons to strike deeper inside Russia. They still haven't reached an agreement on that. Russia is trying to redefine its red lines, which I think have become a bit blurred of late because previous threats from the Kremlin haven't been followed through on. For example, the West has supplied missiles, tanks and aircraft, F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine without any consequence from the Kremlin, despite the threat of retaliation. And there have been so many nuclear threats, loose nuclear threats from the Kremlin of late, that I think there's a sense they've started to lose their impact, started to lose their meaning. So this, I think, is an attempt to redefine these threats, be more specific, be more defined and be more tangible. But the fundamental question remains, and that is this another bluff from Vladimir Putin, or is it for real?
OK, for now, thank you. Now, news about us. Sky News has won an International Emmy Award for its coverage of the Myanmar civil war.
We travelled in small convoys through the government-army lines, using tracks and back roads.
Chief Correspondent Stuart Ramsey and the team went on an undercover mission embedded with Myanmar's secretive resistance movement. They witnessed a remarkable effort by medics to save lives on the front line at a secret hospital, the last of its kind, hidden in the jungle, as well as undeniable evidence of war crimes. At the awards, Stuart was joined on stage by his producer, Dominique, and camera operator, Richie, and editor, Tom. He thanked the people in Myanmar who allowed Sky News in, even if it meant they faced danger.
Most of all, it has to go to the people the staff of the last hospital, the doctors, the nurses, and everyone who worked there. It was vitally important that they helped us film, but they were in so much danger because we were even there, and it was dangerous for them.
And dangerous for the team as well. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you, how widespread closures of pharmacies are having a huge impact on patients.
Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast equivalent of a Pro Plus caffeine tablet that tells you everything about what you need to know the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me in the Zoom call is Sam Coates of Sky News.
The front runner among the members, Kenny Badenoch, did much worse than I was expecting. Now, traditionally and historically, MPs want to rush to back early the front runner candidate because it helps your chances of getting a job further down the track. It's good to be seen to be there early with the person who's going to win. And the fact that even though she was topping a lot of the surveys, that she didn't get more than 6 votes behind Robert Jenrick is very ominous for her campaign.
This issue had sort of bubbled away a bit last week. It was always going to come back this week because of the vote, but it was rather blown up again on Thursday due to a very prominent Labour Party commentator wading in on it and saying that Rachel Reeves might need an escape route. Now, that person was Ed Balls, who used possibly one of the most prominent Labour figures to speak about Treasury matters.
Oh my God.
What happened?
Sorry, I've got my cat is fighting another cat through the window. I'm going to have to stop it.
There's a cat fight.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. Cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
we've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News Thursday morning. A newly knighted Sir Alan Bates and his long crusade over the post office is far from over. He's threatened legal action over delays in compensation for the Horizon IT scandal. A warning that this report from our business correspondent Adele Robinson contains some flash photography.
History rewriting itself the way it should be.
Sir Alan Bates for services to justice.
Sir Alan Bates, knighted by the Princess Royal for services to justice. 2 decades since he first took on the post office, 2 decades since he was wrongly accused of stealing from them, along with hundreds more victims.
We're accepting this on behalf of the whole group and the suffering everyone's gone through. And if it helps me, take our battle forward, the case that we've still got to fight, then, wonderful. It's great. It's a real honour from that point of view.
Will you be accountable for this, Mrs. Venables?
It's been 7 months since former Post Office boss Paula Venables was stripped of her CBE.
Did you lie to MPs?
More than 700 sub-postmasters were falsely accused of theft because of faulty Horizon computer software on her watch.
Taking this on behalf of all of the group, then I think we deserve it, unlike she did, and who drove the business into the ground and brought it into such disrepute.
But Sir Alan, being Sir Alan, wants to use his new status to push the government into action on financial redress schemes for victims, with a new deadline of March next year.
And since the new government's come in, I've not heard a word from them about the schemes or anything. There are potential legal avenues we could take, but it's going to then be another year, 18 months for the group. But if we can't get these things resolved shortly, if we can't get a affirmation from them of a March 2025 deadline, then we may as well follow these other routes. And I know we've got the support of the nation behind us. And if we need to fundraise for a court case, we will.
Sir Alan is unsurprisingly yet to finish his fight. He says it's a long route to travel. This medal may help him. Adele Robinson, Sky News, Windsor.
Well, in response to Sir Alan's comments, the Department for Business and Trade said almost £290 million has been paid to more than 2,800 claimants across 4 compensation schemes. But we know there is more to be done, and we are committed to ensuring every postmaster receives full and fair redress as quickly as possible. More than 430 pharmacies have permanently shut their doors across England in the last year. That's around 8 every single week. The healthcare watchdog says this is having a disproportionate impact on older people and those living in rural areas. Thoran Govind is a pharmacist and former chair of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and joins us now. It's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Why are so many closing their doors?
The key part of this is funding pressures, which are impacting the whole high street. As you can imagine, there's business rates. There is staff do not want to work in community pharmacy, and that is not surprising given the pressures that are on us, which are not being relieved despite the continued highlighting of all the issues. We're also dealing with medicine shortages, so we are dealing with hours each week trying to just find medication, source that medication for patients. And we are also having to deal with abuse from the public as well. Now, what I would say is these closures are having a huge impact on patients because ultimately, and what we want to do is be available for our patients and able to provide medication. But what this Health Watch report is talking about is also temporary closures where pharmacies are having to close for maybe some hours each day, but also permanent closures. And you have highlighted, Kay, the key issue there, more than 8 pharmacies closing a week in England.
How much of an impact do these closures have? And are they temporary or permanent closures?
There is the mix, but Kay, what I would clearly highlight here is I can give you an example of even myself working where the pharmacy nearby was closed for the day because they couldn't get any staff. The issue that had and the impact that had was that we had a huge deluge of patients who would have gone to that pharmacy. We also had patients who couldn't access their medications at that pharmacy and then had to come to us or go elsewhere in the healthcare system. But this is the impact. If you underfund the healthcare system, if you underfund pharmacy and don't recognise it is at the heart of the community, then this is the resulting impact. And it is very frustrating that what we have been warning about for a number of years is now happening and patients are suffering.
Will it undermine the Pharmacy First scheme that the previous government introduced?
Well, if people can't access healthcare and they are struggling to access healthcare, then that undermines people's trust in the system. It means that, if you can't get an appointment with your GP, you might go to A&E. If you can't get an appointment with you can't walk into your pharmacy, which is normally for most people a 20-minute walk, then you might go to other areas of the system. And the fundamental part here is we can't just tinker with one part of the primary care contract. They need to make sure that the contract works for everybody and make sure that it works in the best interest of patient flow, which it currently does not do. And I welcome Health Watch here seeking a national evaluation to consider the issues facing pharmacy. And that includes workforce funding, that key issue, data, and also estates. We don't get support for maintaining pharmacy premises, unlike our GP colleagues. The contracts differ. I think we need to see a bit more alignment and recognition that we're all working under the same contract for the NHS.
OK, final thought. Are certain areas affected worse than others?
Yes, but there are some areas, and thankfully, I know Health Watch have gone into this more clearly, but this is my message for patients. You need to contact your local MP and highlight to them how valuable your pharmacy is to you, that ability to seek out advice without an appointment, to have access to treatments for that Pharmacy First scheme. You can go there and seek advice on shingles, UTIs, amongst others. Please help us help you, because we are frustrated just like you are that we cannot support you in the way that we want to and should be able to because of underfunding and a lack of support.
OK, we must leave it there, but thank you for taking the time. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Let's catch up with Wilf, should we? What's caught your eye today, Wilf? Morning.
Good morning to you, Kay. Lots on the agenda today. Of course, the top story, the latest situation in the Middle East. And it's really quite unbelievable to consider quite how many people we have there. 7 or 8 by my count, and we'll be joined by them live as and when they're able and safe to do so. And that will be throughout the day, of course, on Sky News, as you've already started with Alistair Bunkle. We'll also have the latest on the debate around Sir Keir Starmer's freebies. We'll play a bit more of that interview that you've already dipped into with Beth and Sir Keir and explore that with a couple of guests and experts. The COVID inquiry kicks off once again today. We're on to the first day now of Module 3 of 10, a few more still to come. This one is exploring the impact that COVID-19 had on healthcare systems. And Sir Chris Whitty's probably the most big-name person giving testimony today, witness giving testimony today. He's second in the list, due on, therefore, by about 11:30. So we'll dip into some of that. And we'll also be joining Becky Gotterill, as you've done already, with her full report relating to knife crime in Wolverhampton. Today, as you know, is the start of a 2-day sentencing, so we won't get the result of it, for 2 people who are thought to be the UK's youngest knife crime killers, and we'll have Becky's full report on that.
OK, well, for now, thanks very much indeed. Now, would you like to see a praying otter?
Yes, please.
What about a cowering cheetah?
Yes, please.
OK, funny. Here we go. The funniest wildlife pictures of the year have been revealed. That's not a cheetah, that's a leopard, I think, is he? Oh, OK, maybe he's a cheetah. How can you tell the difference? I know, but not from that picture.
Cheetahs meowed, don't they?
No, it's the difference in their spots. Oh, okay. And also, cheetahs don't have retractable claws.
It did look like it was hiding.
I don't want to get close enough to discern whether the claws are retracting or not.
And this guy got close enough. The lions are called the king of the jungle, but perhaps that should be Queen, as this lioness gives him a good talking to. Don't know what's happened there. And can you work out which zebra is at the front?
This is fantastic.
Wow. What a picture.
The one on the left's at the front, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And then there's this photo that makes you want to smile. He is an elephant seal. There he is. Also a video category, including this. It's a tern surfing on another one. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. We'll say that while there were children watching, but I think they probably had other ideas. And there's this one. The fox appears to be enjoying a frosty morning until he wants to have a good scratch on his back. There you go.
So cute.
Yeah. Foxes are not.
I wish the ones
I used to have chickens.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Often lost a chicken to a fox. The competition created to fuse exceptional wildlife photography and the positive power of humour, as well as help promote the conservation of wildlife and habitats. We'll have a photographer and co-creator on the show later on.
Oh, cool. Fantastic. I love the fact also that you kind of get these moments in time, but you know that sometimes people have been out for months and months working on these
waiting
images.
for that one picture.
Yeah, there's a great picture on Instagram, doing the rounds at the moment, a video on Instagram, with a lion and an antelope in the dark walking home, and it says, when the Discovery Channel have gone home for the day. It's quite funny. Coming up in just a few moments' time, we'll have all today's top stories for you, including what is going on with Keir Starmer and his freebies or otherwise, talking about an apartment that he took for his child's studies for his GCSEs. But what happened next? Stay tuned. Bye now.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle. Why only in America? People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hi everybody, very good morning. 8 o'clock coming up on today's programme for you. The UN warns that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon, but hopes from the US that a ceasefire could be agreed within hours.
And in politics here, the row over donations that won't go away. Now Sir Keir Starmer's accused of pretending that Lord Ali's luxury penthouse was his own home in a COVID Christmas message.
And what does it take to become the world's strongest man? We'll speak to one a little later.
Is it you?
I wish.
Thursday, the 26th of September, the United States, the UK and the EU issue a joint statement calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the border between Israel and Lebanon.
There has been no official response from either side to the proposal, but Benjamin Netanyahu left Israel in the early hours of the morning to fly to the United Nations, and US officials privately think that there could be a reply within the coming hours.
Also ahead, investigating the gangs of Wolverhampton. Sky News goes on patrol with a specialist task force as the UK's youngest knife killers face sentencing. Bragging about an abduction, the haunting claims about the prime suspect in Madeleine McCann's disappearance. Keir Starmer tells Sky News he took free accommodation from a Labour donor to protect his family. And she doesn't look happy. We'll show you some of the best images from this year's Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards. Good morning. The United Nations has warned that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon. The United States, the UK and other allies have issued a joint statement calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire, but there have been more strikes this morning. These are the latest pictures from the border between Israel and Lebanon. They show black smoke rising over southern Lebanon from an Israeli strike in the last few moments. US officials say they expect a temporary pause to be agreed in the coming hours, but so far there's been no official response from Israel or Hezbollah. In a moment, we'll get the latest from Alistair Bunkle, who is in northern Israel for us. But first, our special correspondent Alex Crawford reports from southern Lebanon.
South Lebanon is being hammered by Israeli airstrikes. There are a few places here where residents feel safe now. A residential block on the outskirts of Tyre is still burning as we turn up. It's one of hundreds attacked by Israeli forces during another intense day of bombing. The Israeli army chief says strikes like these are preparations for a possible ground assault into Lebanon.
Allahu Akbar.
Rhetoric or not, for residents in places like Nabatir, the war is all around. They targeted right next to us, he's saying. And this is the second. And this is the third. The emergency services are struggling to keep pace. There's no let-up in the airstrikes, the killing, wounding and terror.
We're still seeing lots of people on the move. There is a huge migration of people out of the area that's being targeted by the Israelis, and all along we're seeing evidence of airstrikes. The whole area around here is peppered by them.
Hezbollah is being relentlessly pursued, but it's coming at a cost to civilians who are in the way. Whole families are missing, with little time to search. And these two little sisters are among the dozens killed in another deadly day for the country. As parts of Lebanon came under sustained attack, Hezbollah's refusing to back down, claiming to fire its first ballistic missile at intelligence headquarters near Tel Aviv, which was intercepted by the Israelis. The ever-escalating situation is causing a growing humanitarian crisis, with hundreds of schools turned into shelters and thousands reliant on scarce aid. Lebanon's Social Affairs Minister didn't want to talk to us about it, nor to those in the shelter. He was heckled by those who've recently fled their homes and feel they're getting no help. One traumatized mother said she'd fled with her 5 children hours earlier. There's a lot of destruction. People died, houses got destroyed, the roads were blocked, she said. There's no more bread, no more food, no more water. But the Israeli airstrikes are going on through much of the night as well as the day now. This was close to the Lebanese-Italian hospital. And there's no end in sight to this right now. Alex Crawford, Sky News in southern Lebanon.
As promised, Alistair with us now from Haifa in Israel. Talk of a ceasefire. What are your thoughts there? We've got a problem just at the moment, Alistair. Bear with me, if you wouldn't mind. We can't quite hear you. Not sure what's going on. We'll fix that immediately and come back to you in just a few moments' time. Do you want to just check it one more time? Are you with us this time or not?
I can hear you. Can you hear me
Great,
now?
Alistair, well done. I was asking you about whether the ceasefire might go ahead or not.
So there are reasons why both sides should want to enter into a pause in the fighting. Israel, I think, has reached a point where a ground invasion is becoming closer. Israel knows, for all of its talk, knows that a ground invasion of Lebanon would be a very deadly and difficult exercise for the Israeli military. Hezbollah has hundreds of miles of tunnels dug under southern Lebanon. No doubt there are thousands of fighters hiding in them now, although a lot of the villages and towns you saw in Alex's report are deserted. Underground, I expect it is very busy. It's rolling hills, it's villages, it's towns. It will be a very difficult battlefield for the Israelis to fight in. And so a pause in the fighting to try and achieve what they want through diplomatic means might be quite attractive. Hezbollah would no doubt like a pause in the fighting because they are still reeling from a blitz over the last few days of airstrikes and intelligence coups by Israeli security that has killed many commanders, foot soldiers, taken out missiles, launch sites, infrastructure, etc. But there are reasons why both sides might not want to pause in the fighting. Israel has momentum at the moment. They have had, let's make no bones about it, a pretty good 8 or 9 days. And Hezbollah has not really done much damage in return. So Israel might feel that a pause in the fighting risks that momentum, and they want to keep their boot on the necks of Hezbollah. Hezbollah might not want a ceasefire because their very existence is to fight Israel. They talk about the unity of the arenas, that is, bringing together all of Iran's proxies like Hamas, like Hezbollah, to fight against the existence of Israel. It is why Hezbollah came to Hamas's defense on October the 8th, the day after the Hamas attacks, and has been firing rockets into Israel ever since. So if Hezbollah were to back down now, that would be deeply humiliating for Hassan Nasrallah, its leader, and it would probably call into question the very being of Hezbollah as this military entity. I think the one way possibly out of this for Hassan Nasrallah, the ladder he could climb down, is to frame it as the benefit of the Lebanese people, because there are millions in Lebanon who are terrified about the prospect of further war. They don't want it to happen. The economy is in ruins. It would take years to rebuild the country if it happened. Maybe that is the route out of all of this.
OK, for now, thank you. Darren's with us. Talk about the row over donations and gifts that just will not go away. So Keir Starmer has been accused of suggesting that Lord Ali's luxury, remember him, luxury penthouse was his own home in a COVID Christmas message in December of 2021. At the time, there were strict rules in place to prevent the spread of the virus. This is what he said.
At times like this, we must all put the national interest first and play by the rules. Of course, I understand that sticking to the rules can be inconvenient, but stick to the rules we must.
Which included staying at home.
That wasn't his home, even though he had pictures of his kids in the background. This is all very strange. So we've obviously had the glasses, we've had the suits, we've had the football tickets and the concert tickets. The last 2 days have been dominated by Lord Ali's home. He's a Labour peer and donor. And we've got kind of two separate stories you like. So let's deal with this one. This one relates to, as you just saw, COVID, the winter of 2021. And Keir Starmer was addressing the nation, encouraging people to work from home. And yet he wasn't in his own home. Now, we didn't know that at the time. He didn't tell us. It was never declared. Downing Street insists there was no COVID rules broken, and we don't think there were, but it was just it's just a bit weird.
But the inference was that it was his own home.
Without a shadow of a doubt, we were never given the pretense that it wasn't otherwise. In fact, it was used again when Queen was it twice more? Once at least when Queen Elizabeth died. So that's all very strange. It's just strange, isn't it, that we didn't know that. And then additionally, obviously, we had the story around yesterday where we know that he stayed in Lord Ali's flat during the general election campaign. Now, he tried to back those questions away by saying that this was because he wanted his son to have privacy during GCSEs. But there again are questions about how long he stayed in that flat. He stayed for more than a month after the GCSE season had finished, effectively to the end of the election campaign. And so people are raising, I think, two questions. Just why are you doing this? What is the reason? And why have you not been as open about it as you should be? And is there an element of hypocrisy here, effectively? You attacked the Conservative Party for years about donations and about public service and all that sort of stuff, and yet you seem to have fallen somewhat into the same trap. But let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer had to say to Beth Rigby yesterday when he was trying to defend himself in New York.
I wasn't going to let my son fail or not do well in his GCSEs because of journalists outside our front door.
Do you see how it looks to some people?
Well, I think that's why the rules are there to declare it. But look, every day...
Do you get it, though?
Every day...
Do you get how it looks?
If you're putting to me, Beth, that I should have stayed in my Kentish Town home and disrupted my son's GCSEs, that was the right thing to do, then I think you should put that to me.
But he did stay on a month afterwards. Yeah. The season had finished. We don't know exactly when he left. We also know that he was there when the exit poll was released.
So, Keir Starmer and Labour are going to try and say, you know what, we're going to be judged at the end of the day on what we do to improve the country, and we've not done anything wrong, that we've been transparent, it's all within the rules. And to be honest, that's true. But at the same time, optics in politics matters. Not least of all, as I said, when you've effectively been on your high horse for the last couple of years, when you've been in opposition. And I think a lot of people will feel that this is just not necessary. And I suppose to come back to that fundamental point about why. Why do you feel this was necessary? Why couldn't you buy your own suits? Why couldn't you stay in your own house? And we've not really had a definitive answer for Downing Street, and hence why this story carries on, and hence why I think it is damaging the Prime Minister's polling rates.
OK, I was going to make some gag about glasses and myopia, but I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to ask you about today's top stories.
Yes, we're going to turn our attention to US politics now, because New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted after federal corruption investigations into his administration. It's unclear what charge or charges he's facing, as the indictment's currently sealed. He will become the first sitting mayor of New York City to face criminal charges, but he's vowing not to resign, claiming the investigation is based on lies.
I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
A catastrophic hurricane is expected to hit Florida today and move far inland as it does. The National Hurricane Center in the US has warned it's likely to bring strong winds and could reach Category 4 strength by this evening. Schools have closed and officials have declared emergencies in both Florida and Georgia. The Ministry of Justice is still looking for a handful of prisoners freed by mistake during the emergency release scheme earlier this month. The measure was used to free up space across overcrowded prisons. 37 people were mistakenly released, though. Authorities still searching for 5, including one person accused of reoffending. The UK's last remaining coal-fired power station will shut at the end of the month. Ratcliffe-on-Soar has been generating electricity since 1968, occupying a pretty prominent spot in the East Midlands skyline. At its peak, able to power about 2 million homes. And I'm afraid to say the wet weather set to continue. The Met Office issuing a series of yellow weather warnings across large parts of the UK. The warnings indicate heavy rain, which could cause disruption. It covers much of England and Wales. Apart from North Wales and parts of the West Midlands and the northwest of England, it's in place until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Sentencing of 2 of the UK's youngest ever knife killers will begin this morning. 2 12-year-olds convicted for the murder of Sean Ceasefire Ceasefire?
Ceasefire.
Thank you. In Wolverhampton with a machete. Becky is with us. She'll tell us about it after her report.
I'm out with a specialist task force from West Midlands Police. It's the last day of the school term. A call's come in. A young boy with a weapon. This is what they find. This region has replaced London as the knife crime capital of the UK, and those carrying weapons are getting younger. Sean Ceasefire was murdered by two 12-year-old boys in Wolverhampton in a random and unprovoked attack. They stabbed him several times with a machete. I've come to his home in the Caribbean to speak exclusively to his younger sister, Shanna.
The same day that he passed away, he had called me like in school. I was in school, and he called me like during break time, and he had asked me like how I was and stuff like that. And that was the last day he told me that he loved me.
This is one of the children who killed Sean, posing with his machete across his chest.
It was shocking because like, wow, 12-year-olds, like, it doesn't make sense. It's just really crazy. It's an unforgivable act that kids would have done. Like, you should know like what's right and what's wrong. As 12 years old, you should know what's right and what's wrong.
Shanna is haunted by her brother's brutal killing.
Especially at night, I just think about it like into detail, and there's times that I would just be in my bed and just cry about it.
The boys who murdered Sean are the youngest ever knife killers in the UK. Back in Wolverhampton, I've met up with one of their friends.
It was just shocking. I thought he was going to grow up to be a basketballer or something. I never expected him to do something like that. The other one was just naughty. He was bad breed.
He's 14. He tells me he's been targeted by rival gang members, and it's made him want to carry a knife.
People carry knives because there's a fear factor, to protect yourself, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Knives are destroying lives in the West Midlands, but violence is a daily reality here. And young people aren't prepared to give up their weapons.
When you were there, Becky, what sort of mood did you pick up on?
Well, the thing that really struck me from working on this piece with my colleague Andy Hughes was how many children are carrying knives for protection, kind of for two reasons. Either they're saying, you know, we've been robbed at knife point before, and if we go out with a knife, we think we're more likely to hold on to our phone. Or there's kind of this toxic postcode gang culture, particularly in Wolverhampton where we were, where, you know, kids don't sign up to be part of a gang, but just by living in a particular postcode, they are affiliated with that gang. And as soon as they go, say, 2 minutes down the road, they are then vulnerable to being targeted by rival gangs, and that is why they feel the need to go out with knives. Now, the government has tried to crack down on what they call statement knives. These are either these zombie knives that have the big serrated edges and are kind of associated with zombie films, or machetes, like the one used to kill Sean. But the problem is, this has been something that the government has been trying to do for years. When the Tories were in power, they were trying to do it as well. It doesn't really seem to have worked. And the truth is, if you want to get hold of a knife, you don't need to carry a zombie knife. You know, we saw a 15-year-old being arrested with a big kitchen knife down his trousers. So really, it's going to take a lot more action to try and solve this problem.
OK. And you've done an extended 10-minute report, of course, haven't you? Becky's report throughout the day here on Sky News as she investigates the young gangs of Wolverhampton. You can also read more about the story on the Sky News website. These are the latest images from the border between Israel and Lebanon. They show black smoke rising over southern Lebanon from an Israeli strike in the last few moments. US officials say they expect a temporary pause to be agreed in the coming hours, but so far there's been no official response from Israel or Hezbollah. Joined now by the chair of the Defence Select Committee and Labour MP, Tandezi. Hi, how are you? It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. How hopeful are you on the next steps, suggestions that there may be a 21-day ceasefire?
Look, first of all, I am very, very glad that the Prime Minister led efforts within the United Nations to call for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon, just as the government has been calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And it's also great to hear that there's now a coordinated response within the United Nations Security Council by the US, by the EU. I know that France also called for a special United Nations Security Council meeting as well. So it seems that within the United Nations that there is consensus. It is now up to Israel and Hezbollah as to what they will do. We will find out very soon about the Israeli position because Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be making his address, and then
The UN General Assembly.
That's right. And then we will be hoping that Hezbollah also accepts that. But I think that's what's desperately needed because of the devastation that has been wrought. Within the last week, more than 500 people have lost their lives. More than 50 children have been killed. And I know that the UK government has also condemned the killing of 2 UNHCR aid workers. So there is a lot to achieve, but it can only be achieved collectively.
How worried are you about Brits in Lebanon? We've been chatting to some at the airport, Beirut, saying it's nearly impossible to get a flight.
Look, I know commercial airlines were operating, and in fact, I was due to address a meeting, a defence meeting at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, where Defence Secretary John Healey and I were both supposed to be there, but unfortunately, the Defence Secretary had to leave early in order to chair preparations for a potential evacuation of British nationals.
That was the Cobra meeting, yeah.
Precisely, and then that's in the absence, obviously, of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary who have flown to New York for the UN General Assembly. But 700 troops have also been sent to a base which I recently had the pleasure of visiting, RAF Akrotiri. So our brave servicemen and women are there, and that is also okay because I'm glad that the government has also learned from the previous devastating debacle in Afghanistan when we weren't able to effectively withdraw British nationals and others.
So are we preparing for that Dunkirk-style sea lift, as we've heard about?
Look, at the moment, we're hopeful that there will be a 21-day immediate ceasefire, assuming that both parties can agree to that. However, there have been previous fall storms. There was also a lot of expectation, especially in the US and in the UK, that there would be a ceasefire in Gaza. Unfortunately, that has not transpired. So we desperately want de-escalation of the violence, and we cannot afford for the conflict.
I understand that, but my question was, as the chairman of the Defence Select Committee, is it your understanding that we can bring Brits out by sea if we need to?
Look, I'm grateful to the Defence Secretary who called me last night, and we had a long 10-15-minute discussion. He updated me about efforts. So if required, preparations are in place for that. However, it is hoped that it will not come to that, but at least the preparations are in place.
So if necessary, we can get Brits out?
Precisely. I think that's
the most
exactly
important thing.
what's been put in place.
OK, let me talk about your boss, because it's a story that is not going away. You've heard the latest news about £20,000 worth of accommodation during the election campaign. He says that it was so his son could study in peace. He stayed on, the Prime Minister, for at least a month afterwards. Is that acceptable?
Look, initially, when I was on my way back down south from Liverpool, when I read the headline that £20,000 for the Prime Minister's son's accommodation, I thought, oh my God, here we go again after the recent furore regarding gifts. But when I actually read in detail various reports on it, and when I heard the Prime Minister's explanation, the human factor, I thought, come on, we've got to do better than this. I'm sure that whether it's Sky News, yourselves, we can do a lot better than this, because the headline should have been that man fearing for the safety of his family, and in the hope that his son, in particular, who's sitting his GCSE exams, can have that safety and well-being. Well, that he finds the place of his friend's flat as a temporary accommodation. So I think that
OK,
it's not,
let's take this a little step further, if I may. He subsequently stayed on for another month after the GCSE season had stayed. He was there to listen to the exit poll be released. He was there when he said, you all need to stay at home, and he wasn't in his own home. He was there suggesting that when the Queen had died, that it was his own home, with pictures behind him of his family. It wasn't his own home. The same bloke got a free pass, access all areas to Downing Street.
OK, I think, the Prime Minister has stated...
Does that really pass the sniff test for you?
Well, look, for me, the key thing around the accommodation, with the issue that you raised, I think for there, it is a fact that outside the Prime Minister's home, at that point in time, there were people camped out, whether it's
Are you ignoring the rest of the stuff I said?
No, look, I'm not ignoring that. I'm just answering that question first, because I think it's important.
We've already done that question. We've moved on to other times he didn't need to be there, but nevertheless he was still there and suggested he was at home.
No, I'm not au fait with all the details of various previous examples, but in terms of the accommodation aspect, I think we do need to bear in mind that the leader of the opposition, as he was then, and if, according to projections, he would be the future Prime Minister, his home was constantly being deluged by whether it's protesters, whether it's journalists, investigators.
Once the GCSEs had finished?
So, I think that's something that I think the Prime Minister and others no doubt will answer.
What about suggesting he was at home during lockdown restrictions when he wasn't? He was in somebody else's home.
What I understand from that is that, as the Prime Minister said, that nothing untoward, nothing illegal happened. All the rules were followed.
He was pulling the wool over our eyes.
Look, I will take him at his word. I think he's a man of integrity, and if that's what he stated.
Pictures of his kids behind him.
Pictures of his kids? Well,
seriously, that would suggest that he was in his own home, wouldn't it?
Well, look.
What would it suggest to you if you had pictures of the kids behind when you were doing a chat?
Okay, you know, whenever you're doing a video or you're doing, there is also, whether it's the flag behind, whether it's,
That's a bit different. We all own the flag. We don't all own his kids.
Yeah, well, look, whether it's creating the right environment, that obviously will be individuals who are in charge of whether it's the setup, whether it's cameras, etc. But ultimately, I think we need to be very, very careful here when we start putting out headlines like, oh, £20,000 taken for accommodation and so on. Look, nothing illegal has happened, first of all, and no cash has exchanged hands.
Nobody
as the
said
Prime Minister, I think that's what the headline implied. But we also.
So what does it imply when he's got pictures of his kids behind him?
Well, look,
it implies that he's at home, and he wasn't.
I think often when somebody, when they're doing a Zoom meeting, sometimes I might have some books behind me. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting in a library. It just means that you just want a better
I can
background.
buy those same books, but I wouldn't use pictures of somebody else's kids behind me if I was trying to do a video, would I? Come on.
I think, look, I don't think those sort of decisions are taken by the Prime Minister or the Minister of the day. I think that is something which is, in terms of preparation.
If he hadn't wanted that picture there, he would have said, I don't want pictures of my kids behind me in this shot, because he's very protective of his children. He made a conscious decision for that to happen.
Well, no, I think ultimately,
implying it was his home.
I think that rather than trying to bring his kids in, rather than trying to do other things, I think what we need to bear in mind is that the public will begin.
We didn't bring his children into it. He did.
I think when you had the headlines of like £20,000 accommodation, etc., etc., I think that's where we're. And what is really, really disheartening to see, especially on social media, is people are trying to compare the conduct of this Prime Minister with a previous Prime Minister. Let us not forget when it was Boris Johnson.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
No, perception is reality. Let's talk about this Prime Minister. Perception is reality. Why on earth did he give a pass to somebody who'd given him 55 grand's worth of freebies? Why did he give him an access all areas pass to Downing Street?
Look, Lord Ali, as I understand it, has been not just a Labour peer, but also a major Labour donor, a member for decades. And he obviously is a close friend of the Prime Minister for several years. In terms of his attendance at various meetings...
It's a place of work, Downing Street.
And
it's not about his mates going around.
And I also understand that that was on a temporary basis,
What was it for?
Thereafter it was removed. So
what was it for?
Well, according to reports, as I think Sky News itself has reported, it was to attend various meetings.
What sort of meetings?
So, well, I'm not privy to that. Kay, this is way above my pay grade. I mean, little old me, I think, I've been to Downing Street, or number 11 Downing Street recently, but that was merely to meet the Chancellor. That was as a meeting for us MPs. So while I'm not privy to those meetings, I think ultimately we must recognise that nothing untoward has happened with regards to this. Where the issue around clothes, I think it was good that that scrutiny was there, and then the government, having listened to whether it's yourselves, whether it was us as MPs, they actually took the decision and then made the change. And that it has also been stated that in terms of future policy for government ministers, that they will not be accepting whether it's gifts of clothes, etc.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
you've also taken 300 quid off pensioners.
Look, in terms of pensioners, I think, as has been stated, that we need to balance the books. I think one of the reasons why the Labour Party actually won the election was in terms of two key things. Firstly, regaining economic credibility, that the public trusted us with the public finances.
And there we have it. It's all about trust.
It was stated that we will bring down our national debt, we will balance the books, and secondly, we are now again trusted on defence and national security. So when a £22 billion budgetary
10 billion of that was your
black
problem.
hole was found.
That was because you did public sector pay increases. Well, it was 12 billion before you did that.
Is something that the Tories never actually factored in.
That was a problem of your own making.
And we did. Okay,
I'm getting in trouble. I have to call it a day. I'm sorry, but we can have this debate all afternoon.
That was on the back of independent pay review bodies. And look, we need to make sure that it's not just enough to clap our nurses and doctors and rail workers who worked through a pandemic when most of us were scared to even venture out.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that they have a decent
money
wage
again now. Let's
for working
see
people.
Whether you're a hostage to fortune. It's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. We hear from a British doctor in Beirut about what it's like in the Lebanese capital. These images on your screens now. We'll have more coming up in just a few moments' time. Do stay tuned our way.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win. Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. We thought we would let Darren critique our latest interview.
It's pretty critical. Yeah, I think, clearly there are lots of questions this morning and Downing Street aren't necessarily providing them, but it's also clear that lots of Labour MPs don't have the answers to them either. This all revolves around the Prime Minister having access to Lord Ali's house, a Labour donor and a Labour peer. we've got kind of two stories, if you like. The one that's been around for the last 24 hours about the fact that he stayed there, the Prime Minister, it's in Covent Garden, it's worth 20 million quid, during the general election campaign. The Prime Minister tried to defend that yesterday by saying that this was to try and help his son out during GCSEs, but it's become clear this morning that he stayed for a month after the end of the GCSE season up to the general election. Why? And then the second story that's emerged overnight is that actually he used this property a couple of times to make speeches or to address the nation during moments like COVID and the Queen's death. He didn't declare it, and we all thought he was doing this from his own home, and it was not his home, it was Lord Ali's home. He even had pictures of his kids in the background. Again, the question is why? You just interviewed the chair of the Defence Select Committee. I think it's fair to say he certainly didn't have an answer to any of those questions, really struggling to explain why the Prime Minister felt this was necessary. And I think the reason this story's not going away is not just because they can't provide these answers, it's also because many people feel that this was a leader of the opposition who attacked the Conservatives repeatedly for taking donations, for not upholding some of the rules, but also for, as I think as you put it, like the sniff test, not doing things in a way that people would judge to be proper. And that is why I think the Prime Minister is really struggling with these questions today, and why Labour MPs are struggling with them too.
The big problem is, I think, the fact that Lord Ali was allowed complete access to Downing Street, access all areas, so we believe, and we were told that he was doing work. We've asked what work was he doing and who gave him his pass. This is the same Lord Ali that has donated tens of thousands of gifts to the Prime Minister, whether it's clothes or glasses or his son, his flat, so that his son could study in peace. You know,
I think so the Labour Party would say, you know, this guy's been a Labour peer for decades. Like, he's worth a lot of money. He doesn't want anything. He's just someone who believes in the Labour cause. He wants to help out Labour politicians. He's got a flat in Covent Garden. He's got some money. He wants to provide any assistance to those Labour politicians he can. He's been transparent about that. It's all on the record. It's all been declared.
Absolutely.
All that sort of stuff. That is where Labour would defend it, and they say that our politics can't operate without donations. The Conservative leadership candidates are receiving donations at the moment, all that sort of stuff. But I think the big problem is actually the most recent of the House has not been properly declared. And second of all, as I say, it just builds into the sense of hypocrisy. And as you have rightly pointed out, it comes at a time in which millions of pensioners are about to lose their winter fuel allowance. Is it a good look that, you know, senior politicians are getting the clothes paid for and free tickets to concerts and to other things, and indeed the spectacles?
And the accusation from the Conservative Party is that the Labour Party wasn't ready for government, was it? And we see that this period was at 2019, this period of £107,000 worth of donations. That was the period you could see the trajectory. If you're in the Labour Party, you should see the trajectory and go, we're heading towards number 10. This is the period that we become white in the white, squeaky clean. We get our act together, we tighten our kind of selves up. And they've done the opposite. And then for people who have behaved during the pandemic, they're going to go, well, hang on a second, we were stuck at home, you were in your mate's house. Optics.
The party has changed, we're told. ... British citizens have been told to leave Lebanon, and immediately is further what they have had to say. Dr. Ghassan Abu Sita is a plastic and reconstructive surgeon who is currently in Beirut helping assist hospitals there. Joins us now, as you can see. Hello to you, Doctor. What have you been doing in the region?
So I came following the pager explosions and had been operating since then. And then when this latest Israeli war on Lebanon started, joined the teams, or just stayed to treat the wounded coming from the south and from the north of the country.
And are the hospitals, are they still operational? What are the conditions like?
So the problem is that Lebanon has had a crippling economic crisis over the last 4 years, and that's kind of really left the health system quite fragile in terms of the migration of a third of the doctors and nurses, and in terms of the purchasing capacity of a lot of the hospitals. It's a system that's made up of small and medium-sized hospitals, and so these hospitals, when this latest onslaught started, had already been completely full of the wounded from the Tuesday attack. And so quickly they were trying to discharge the patients so that they can receive what is now almost 2,000 wounded.
And what sort of injuries are we talking about?
Blast injuries, unfortunately, kids constitute a big part of those blast injuries, especially from the homes that were targeted, crush injuries from collapsing buildings. We have in this hospital, because it has a pediatric intensive care unit, we have our pediatric intensive care is full of children, blast injuries to the face, amputations to the limb, shrapnel wounds, spinal cord to the abdomen with perforated bowels. Just these are explosive injuries, and it's the same that I had seen in Gaza back in October.
Okay, of course, as far as Israel is concerned, they're saying that they're targeting properties that they know, or buildings that they know, in their opinion, to have Hezbollah operatives within them, and they apologise and are sincerely sorry for any collateral damage. Are you considering taking the Prime Minister's advice and leaving Lebanon?
No, I hope the Prime Minister decides to try to stop this war by imposing sanctions and an arms embargo. Leaving people to their own fate and leaving patients to die from their wounds is not the solution. The solution is to end the war. And that's what we're hoping that the British government would do.
Okay. Good luck. Please keep safe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Major General Rupert Jones, retired senior British Army officer who served as the Standing Joint Forces Commander from November 2018 to July of 2021, is with us now. How challenging... I wonder if I might be able to talk to you first about getting Brits out of what is, to all intents and purposes, a war zone. How challenging is that?
Well, I think you just heard in your last piece, on the ground, it's incredibly chaotic. So it is challenging, undoubtedly, but this is something that the Foreign Office and the British military train for, extensively. We have a dedicated headquarters for this sort of operation. And of course, we've done it quite recently. We've had mention this morning about the difficult evacuation in Kabul in 2021, but as recently as last year, an evacuation operation was run in Sudan. So there are in-depth contingency plans for this sort of thing, but it is still very difficult on the ground because, as your scenes are showing, it is very chaotic and it's difficult for people to move around.
You've been involved with this sort of thing before. How difficult is it to know where people are or where they're supposed to be and how you can get them to a place of safety?
Yeah, this is the difficult thing. So in countries where there is a threat of this sort of violence, if you like, there are contingency plans. The Foreign Office know how many what are called eligible persons are in the country. The estimate appears to be about 6,000. They'll know roughly where those people are. They then have a network of what are called wardens, so people around their country who are their links into if you like, sub bits of the country. So they have a good network, but as you've heard already, some people won't want to leave. This is my home, I want to stay. So it's very difficult to communicate with people, and it's then very difficult to persuade people to move until you're almost in crisis stage. And so there's talk of using commercial flights, but of course, less and less commercial flights are leaving.
Should there be any concern, or what level of concern should there be that Iran might become further involved?
Well, that is, of course, a concern. Ever since the October atrocities, there has been discussion about the conflict in Gaza spreading, terms about all-out war, regional war, and Iran has continued to use its proxies. One of its main proxies is Lebanese Hezbollah, which is why Israel have attacked them. My own sense is that Iran plays a very cautious game. It is not in their interest to have a regional war. That's not to say it won't happen, but I don't judge it to be in their interests. And despite all the kind of media commentary over the months, we're on the brink is often the term that is used, and that is not to understate the risks. My sense is that Iran is very cautious in these things and won't want to see the thing turn into a broader regional war.
OK, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's turn our attention now to Vladimir Putin. He's warned that Russia could use nuclear weapons if it's attacked by another state, even if the attack was conducted with conventional missiles. Let's get more, should we? Standing by, Ivor for us in Moscow. Hello to you, Ivor. He has threatened this before.
Yeah, it's certainly not the first time Vladimir Putin has threatened nuclear force, but this is a slightly different threat than previous ones. It's much more specific, because what he said is that Moscow is going to update its nuclear doctrine, which is the document that spells out when and how Russia can use its substantial nuclear arsenal. Currently, it's only in response to, or when the security of the state is at risk, quite a loose concept. Vladimir Putin is saying that he wants to add conditions so that, in theory, Russia could respond with nukes to an attack from any nation using conventional weapons, for example, missiles, drones, aircraft, which is what Ukraine is already doing, of course. That's how it's attacking Russia. And he's also said that Moscow would consider any assault from a non-nuclear power that's supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack on the Russian Federation. Again, a reference to Ukraine, backed by NATO countries like the US and the UK. Why is he saying this now? It's all a response to this issue being considered by the West over whether or not to allow Ukraine the ability to strike deeper inside Russia using Western weapons. Russia is trying to redefine its red lines to make the West so fearful of a response that they don't want to take the risk. It's a much more tangible threat, much more specific threat than the ones he's made previously. But the question, as ever, is this for real or is it a bluff?
OK, for now. Thank you. Thank you. News about us now. We've won an International Emmy Award for coverage of the Myanmar civil war.
We travelled in small convoys through the government-army lines, using tracks and back roads.
Chief Correspondent Stuart Ramsey and the team went on a month-long undercover mission embedded with Myanmar's secretive resistance movement. This is what they had to say when accepting the reward.
Myanmar is a very difficult place to go to, and so we have to thank the people who helped us get in. We can't really say who they are, but they know who they are. But without them, without the people of Myanmar who looked after us when we were there, it was incredible. But most of all, it has to go to the people the staff of the last hospital, the doctors, the nurses and everyone who worked there. It was vitally important that they helped us film, but they were in so much danger because we were even there.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show, we'll be joined by the former world's strongest man, Eddie Hall. There he is, with a fridge.
Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast equivalent of a Pro Plus caffeine tablet that tells you everything about what you need to know in the day ahead in British politics in under 20 minutes.
My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me in the Zoom call is Sam Coates of Sky News.
The front runner among the members, Kenny Badenoch, did much worse than I was expecting. Now, traditionally and historically, MPs want to rush to back early the front-runner candidate because it helps your chances of getting a job further down the track. It's good to be seen to be there early with the person who's going to win. And the fact that even though she was topping a lot of the surveys, that she didn't get more than 6 votes behind Robert Jenrick is very ominous for her campaign.
This issue had sort of bubbled away a bit last week. It was always going to come back this week because of the vote, but it was rather blown up again on Thursday due to a very prominent Labour Party commentator wading in on it and saying that Rachel Reeves might need an escape route. Now, that person was Ed Balls, who used possibly one of the most prominent Labour figures to speak about Treasury matters.
Oh my God.
What happened?
Sorry, I've got my cat is fighting another cat through the window. I'm going to have to stop it.
There's a cat fight.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. Cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Breakfast Show here on Sky News. We've got Eddie Hall with us, world's strongest man. Chair's not big enough for him to sit on, and he keeps going like this. And we just posed for some social media during the break. He leant on the desk and it moved about 1.5 foot that way. I'm just saying. What does it take to become the world's strongest man?
Well, firstly, the chair has sunk about 2 foot since I've sat on it, yeah. To be the world's strongest man takes years and years and years of dedication to diet, training, recovery. It's I always say it's the equivalent of 3 full-time jobs. You know, you've got a job of eating, you've got a job of training, and then you've got a job of recovering.
Wow.
Because the eating is incredible, isn't it? Most people, 2,500 calories a day. You'll be on, 6, 8?
No, 12.
12.
Yeah.
I don't need that in a week.
Yeah, 12,000 calories a day.
The cost of living crisis must have really hit.
What does that equate to?
Well, do I want to talk you through a quick one?
Yeah, please.
Well, not so much now. You know, about 6,000 calories, 6 to 8,000 calories roughly now. But strongman days would be full English breakfast. You know, and we're talking 4 of everything: 4 bacon, 4 sausage, 4 eggs, 4 black pudding, a lot. Second breakfast would be porridge. There'd be 2 dinners. One would be steak, chicken, rice. The other would be sandwiches and flapjack. And then you'd be snacking during your training. You'd be eating meat, like steaks and stuff whilst I was training. Lots of milk. Like, we're talking gallons of full-fat milk.
Is it oat milk?
No.
He's not lactose intolerant.
No,
I just love the idea that you would snack on steak. Not a chocolate hobnob. No, but snack on a steak.
And you're going to fight next year?
Yeah, early next year. Well, hopefully, not signed the dotted line yet, but hopefully going to be fighting a guy called Mariusz Panotsky, who actually won the World's Strongest Man 5 times in the past.
Right. And is this bare knuckle fighting, or?
It's not, but it might as well be. I mean, in MMA you have 4-ounce gloves, but it's you might as well not wear anything. It's pretty much bare knuckle.
Okay. And you wanted to talk to us about breaking gadgets.
Yes.
Go on then.
Yeah. So I've teamed up with Currys just to promote the repair, don't replace. Done a bit of a campaign. People spend billions. The nation spends billions on replacing products, and I've been doing this campaign. You probably saw on social media. I was carrying a fridge through London, carrying a washing machine. There we go. And yeah, just trying.
Which was heavier?
They're all pretty heavy, to be fair. I think the fridge was the heaviest,
Because it's a freezer
and
as well,
the most
isn't it?
awkward. Yeah.
Wow.
So we had a fun filming that.
I bet you
carrying
did.
that through London.
What made you think, from being at school, to think, oh, you know what? I fancy being the world's strongest man.
You know what? It's kind of like a childhood fascination of watching strongmen on TV, and I think every little boy and every man deep down wants to be the world's strongest man, and if they say they don't, I think they're probably lying to themselves. So
definitely not me.
Definitely you.
So yeah, it was just like a really young childhood fascination to be the world's strongest man, and it sort of kept in the back of my mind all through my childhood. And then when I was 14 years of age, expelled from school and started lifting weights, and that's where it all began, really.
Fantastic. While we've got you, how do you feel about photographs of funny animals? The answer is you say they're great.
I love a good funny animal.
What about a praying otter or a cowering cheetah? Funniest wildlife pictures of the year have just been revealed. Here they come. These are just some of the finalists. That is, in fact, a cheetah. I checked with my son. It's hiding. Actually, I don't think he's hiding. I think he's thinking, yeah, he's going to try and get him, isn't he? That's what he's trying to do there.
Reminds me of that photo of Shaq hiding behind a tree.
This lion's getting an earful. I don't know what he'd done, but obviously he'd done something to upset her.
Yeah.
What else have we got?
Looks like me and the wife.
Zebras. Which of these zebras is at the front?
I like that. Is that a genuine picture?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's very impressive, isn't it?
Which is the front?
I think the one on the right's the front one.
You said the one on the left now.
I think it's the one on the left, but there we go.
Zebras doing what they do best.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, horses with pyjamas on. And there's this one. This is a grinning elephant seal.
Oh, wow. I've got a friend that looks just like that. Brian Shaw, strongman. He looks just like that.
Have we got any more?
Can we get a picture of Brian on there?
No, this is one of my pictures, actually. This is a laughing hyena because his mum's tickling him.
Oh,
do you like that?
That's cute. That's very cute.
It's cute. We've still not got the praying otter. What happened to the praying otter?
Don't know. TBD. Work in progress.
Goodness me.
TBD, what's that mean?
To be decided.
To be decided.
Or to be determined.
Yeah.
So do you still train every day?
Yes, yeah. I fight train most mornings and then weight training in the afternoons, and then when camp starts, I switch the weight training for more swimming, so I get my cardio up.
Oh, very good. You're a bit of a...
No. Let's not even have that conversation with Eddie Hall here. Let's not even try.
3.5 kilos of yoga a week.
Yeah, I'd probably do that.
Have you had your
do that in a day?
I'd do that in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're the world's strongest man.
Have you had your full English already this morning?
So I'm currently on a carnivore diet.
You're going to have that conversation between each other.
Okay.
Because we're out of time. We'll see you in just a couple of seconds here on Sky.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Morning, everybody. 9 o'clock coming up on today's programme. The UN warns that hell is breaking loose in Lebanon, but hopes from the US that a ceasefire could be agreed within hours.
Also in politics here, the row over donations that won't go away. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is accused of pretending that Lord Ali's luxury penthouse in London was his own home during the COVID Christmas message.
And we speak to politician turned author Lord Jeffrey Archer about his new book, An Eye for an Eye.
It's Thursday, the 26th of September. The United States, the UK and the EU issue a joint statement calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the border between Israel and Lebanon.
Although US officials sound confident, no official response has come yet from either side. And in the last few minutes, Hezbollah has fired rockets towards Haifa again, and Israeli jets are bombing southern Lebanon.
Also ahead, investigating the gangs of Wolverhampton. Sky News goes on patrol with a specialist task force as the UK's youngest knife killers face sentencing. Sir Keir Starmer tells Sky News he took free accommodation from a Labour donor to protect his family. And she doesn't look happy. We'll show you some of the best images from this year's Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards. Good morning. There have been more Israeli strikes on Lebanon this morning. The United States, the UK and other allies have issued a joint statement following an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire. These are the latest pictures from the border between Israel and Lebanon. They show black smoke rising over southern Lebanon from an Israeli strike. The IDF says it hit around 75 Hezbollah targets overnight. US officials say they expect a temporary pause to be agreed in the coming hours, but so far there's been no official response from Israel or Hezbollah. In a moment, we'll get the latest from Alistair Bunkle, who's standing by in northern Israel for us. But first, our special correspondent Alex Crawford reports from southern Lebanon.
South Lebanon is being hammered by Israeli airstrikes. There are a few places here where residents feel safe now. A residential block on the outskirts of Tyre is still burning as we turn up. It's one of hundreds attacked by Israeli forces during another intense day of bombing. The Israeli army chief says strikes like these are preparations for a possible ground assault into Lebanon.
Allahu Akbar.
Rhetoric or not, for residents in places like Nabatir, the war is all around. They targeted right next to us, he's saying. And this is the second. And this is the third. The emergency services are struggling to keep pace. There's no let-up in the airstrikes, the killing, wounding and terror.
We're still seeing lots of people on the move. There is a huge migration of people out of the area that's being targeted by the Israelis, and all along we're seeing evidence of airstrikes. The whole area around here is peppered by them.
Hezbollah is being relentlessly pursued, but it's coming at a cost to civilians who are in the way. Whole families are missing, with little time to search. And these two little sisters are among the dozens killed in another deadly day for the country. As parts of Lebanon came under sustained attack, Hezbollah's refusing to back down, claiming to fire its first ballistic missile at intelligence headquarters near Tel Aviv, which was intercepted by the Israelis. The ever-escalating situation is causing a growing humanitarian crisis, with hundreds of schools turned into shelters and thousands reliant on scarce aid. Lebanon's Social Affairs Minister didn't want to talk to us about it, nor to those in the shelter. He was heckled by those who've recently fled their homes and feel they're getting no help. One traumatized mother said she'd fled with her 5 children hours earlier. There's a lot of destruction. People died, houses got destroyed, the roads were blocked, she said. There's no more bread, no more food, no more water. But the Israeli airstrikes are going on through much of the night as well as the day now. This was close to the Lebanese-Italian hospital. And there's no end in sight to this right now. Alex Crawford, Sky News in southern Lebanon.
Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle joining us now from Haifa in Israel, as promised. Any sign of this ceasefire? Alistair, good morning.
Well, it all came into the public arena sort of quite late last night. There were briefings from US officials. They sound pretty confident. I mean, they're saying that they could expect answers from both sides within hours. Now, just to be clear, you know, Hezbollah will not be a part of this negotiation. It will be done through the official Lebanese government, who will then have channels into Hezbollah. So confidence coming from the Israeli side, certainly good reasons why both Hezbollah and Israel would want a pause in the fighting at the moment. I think the Israelis are getting closer to a ground invasion, but they know that that would be incredibly difficult and would take a huge toll on their military. Hezbollah has already suffered a major toll over the last 8 or 9 days. Israeli airstrikes have been relentless. They've taken out senior commanders, they've taken out foot soldiers, they've taken out missiles, launch sites, infrastructure, you name it. So good reason why both sides would want a pause. Good reasons why both sides would also want to keep fighting. Israel has momentum. As I said, it's had a lot of successes over the last week or so. A pause risks that momentum, and so they might decide that actually it'd be better to carry on pushing against Hezbollah. Hezbollah might not want to pause because its very existence is to fight Israel. And if they back down now and step away from it, it could be very humiliating for the group and for its leader, Hassan Nasrallah. That being said, millions of Lebanese are terrified about the prospect of war. Nasrallah could frame it as a move for the benefit of wider Lebanon. But right now, this morning, we hadn't had any air raid sirens for about 18, 19 hours. That doesn't, by the way, mean that nothing has been fired by Hezbollah into Israel. When they fire anti-tank missiles, they go pretty much flat, and so they don't trigger sirens. But we've had no missiles in for about 18, 19 hours until about 20 minutes ago when Hezbollah fired sort of over the Bay Area here. They were intercepted. So that has happened in the last 20 minutes. And Israeli fighter jets are continuing to attack southern Lebanon this morning.
OK, for now, thank you. Now to the row over donations and gifts that just won't go away. So Keir Starmer has been accused of pretending that Lord Ali's luxury penthouse was his own home in a COVID Christmas message in December of 2021. At the time, there were strict rules in place to prevent the spread of the virus.
At times like this, we must all put the national interest first and play by the rules. Of course, I understand that sticking to the rules can be inconvenient, but stick to the rules we must.
That's a lovely picture of the kids behind him, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not his home. Isn't that the point? It's kind of all very strange, this case. So we've got two instances now where Keir Starmer, or two separate, I should say, instances where Keir Starmer's had access to Lord Ali's kind of penthouse in central London. One of them was in relation to his general election campaign a couple of months ago. Now, he batted those questions away, or tried to do yesterday in New York, in which he said that it was important that his son, who was studying for his GCSEs, had somewhere that was peaceful and quiet, and the family home simply wasn't that during the campaign. However, it's subsequently become clear that he stayed there for a whole month after the end of the GCSE season, right up to the end of the general election campaign. Why was that necessary? And then today, as you've just seen in that video, he made that message, give that message to the nation during COVID in 2021, pictures of his family in the background. You might, as a casual viewer watching that, assume that, oh, he's broadcasting from home because he's telling people they should be working from home. But this isn't actually his house, it's Lord Ali's flat again. And that wasn't declared back then. We didn't know that wasn't his home. So, again, questions about why that was necessary and why we didn't know at the time. And earlier you spoke to the chair of the Defence Select Committee trying to get answers to some of these questions. And frankly, I think that was impossible, if you have a watch.
His home was constantly being deluged by whether it's protesters, whether it's journalists,
what about
investigators.
Once the GCSEs had finished?
So, I think that's something that I think the Prime Minister and others no doubt will answer.
What about suggesting he was at home during lockdown restrictions when he wasn't? He was in somebody else's home.
What I understand from that is that, as the Prime Minister said, that nothing untoward, nothing illegal happened. All the rules were followed.
He was pulling the wool over our eyes.
Look, I will take him at his word. I think he's a man of integrity.
I think when you look at all these donation stories, Labour at every single turn have tried to explain them away and said on an individual basis there is an explanation for why this has happened. And, some of the public will accept, others will say, is that appropriate or not? I think what the problem with all of this is just the continued accumulation of all of this. And it is also the sense of hypocrisy from a man who was leader of the opposition who continually attacked the government on very similar bases. It is damaging the Prime Minister's ratings. I think there's little doubt about that. It is a story that is a distraction that Downing Street seem incapable of getting on top of. Today, yet more questions that they don't seemingly have answers to. And I think the big question for the Prime Minister now is, it's kind of gone beyond in some ways the sniff test is can he move on from this? And why has he allowed this story to simply gather pace over the last month when he would say what he wants to be judged on, or the kind of big missions and the big decisions he has to make for the country?
Yeah, and the other thing that strikes me is the guy that gave him all of these donations got a AAA pass to Downing Street. Does that pass the sniff test?
Well,
no rules were broken, we're told.
So a couple of things about that. First of all, they would argue he's a Labour peer. He's been a Labour donor for decades. He's not gaining anything from this. He just wants to help out. But at the same time, they didn't declare that he had this pass until it was uncovered by the Sunday Times newspaper. Second of all, we don't know why he had it. They've never really given an explanation, or indeed who sanctioned the pass. So again, it's one of these things. Maybe this is fine, all above board. As I say, we don't think any rules have been broken, but again, it's just that lack of transparency and also just not the full explanation of why these things have happened.
OK, for now, thanks. Rest of today's top stories.
Yes, let's turn our attention to a man who's due in court today charged with the murder of a teenager in South London. 15-year-old Dan Campbell died from stab wounds after being attacked on Sunday morning. And 18-year-old Jacob Luscious from Abbey Wood will appear before Bromley magistrates later. A second man who was arrested has been released without charge. The New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted after federal corruption investigations into his administration. It's unclear what charge or charges he's facing. As the indictment's currently sealed, he'll become the first sitting mayor of New York City to face criminal charges. But Mr. Adams is vowing not to resign, claiming the investigation is based on lies.
I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
A catastrophic hurricane is expected to hit Florida today and move far inland as it does. The National Hurricane Center in the United States has warned it's likely to bring strong winds and could reach Category 4 strength by this evening. Schools have closed and officials have declared emergencies in Florida and also Georgia. The Ministry of Justice is still looking for a handful of prisoners freed by mistake during the emergency release scheme earlier this month. The measure was used to free up space across overcrowded prisons, and 37 people were mistakenly released. Authorities searching for 5, including one person accused of reoffending. And the wet weather set to continue. The Met Office issuing a series of yellow weather warnings across large parts of the UK. The warnings indicate heavy rain, which could cause disruption. It covers much of England and Wales, apart from North Wales and parts of the West Midlands and the northwest of England. It's in place until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Let's talk about the sentencing of 2 of the UK's youngest ever knife killers. That's going to be happening this morning, or will certainly begin this morning. The 12-year-old's convicted for the murder of Sean ceasefire in Wolverhampton with a machete. Becky is with us, as you can see. She's got an extensive report. Here's just a flavour.
I'm out with a specialist task force from West Midlands Police. It's the last day of the school term. A call's come in. A young boy with a weapon.
On my hands, bro!
This is what they find. This region has replaced London as the knife crime capital of the UK, and those carrying weapons are getting younger. Sean Ceasefire was murdered by two 12-year-old boys in Wolverhampton in a random and unprovoked attack. They stabbed him several times with a machete. I've come to his home in the Caribbean to speak exclusively to his younger sister, Shanna.
The same day that he passed away, he had called me like in school. I was in school, and he called me like during break time, and he had asked me like how I was and stuff like that. And that was the last day he told me that he loved me.
This is one of the children who killed Sean, posing with his machete across his chest.
It was shocking because like, wow, 12-year-olds, like, it doesn't make sense. It's just really crazy. It's an unforgivable act that kids would have done. Like, you should know like what's right and what's wrong. As 12 years old, you should know what's right and what's wrong.
Shanna is haunted by her brother's brutal killing.
Especially at night, I just think about it like into detail, and there's times that I would just be in my bed and just cry about it.
The boys who murdered Sean are the youngest ever knife killers in the UK. Back in Wolverhampton, I've met up with one of their friends.
It was just shocking. I thought he was going to grow up to be a basketballer or something. I never expected him to do something like that. The other one was just naughty. He was bad breed.
He's 14. He tells me he's been targeted by rival gang members, and it's made him want to carry a knife.
People carry knives because there's a fear factor, to protect yourself, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Knives are destroying lives in the West Midlands, but violence is a daily reality here. And young people aren't prepared to give up their weapons.
You have an extended report about this as well, don't you? Two 12-year-olds. Youngest ever to be convicted, I'm guessing?
Yeah, for murder with a knife. And it's really shocking, and we can't see any indication that there was any kind of provocation for this attack. You know, Sean Ceasefire was not part of a gang. He was not armed. We don't know what happened because the CCTV footage is very grainy. But clearly these two children went out with a machete and wanted to use it. And this case does feel quite rare. You know, the kids that I was speaking to when I was working on this report with my colleague Andy Hughes, they were saying that they do take out weapons, but it's for self-defence. Either they're scared that they're going to be robbed, or they're part of this kind of toxic postcode gang culture that goes on, particularly in Wolverhampton where we were, where, you know, kids don't sign up to be part of a gang, but just living in a particular postcode, they are affiliated with a gang. And if they walk even 2 minutes down the road to a different postcode, they are vulnerable to being attacked by another gang. Now, the government has tried to clamp down on what they call statement knives. So it's machetes or zombie knives, which are those big knives with serrated edges. But this is something that governments have previously tried to sort out. It's not really worked. And the truth is, if you want to get hold of a knife, it's very easy to do so. We saw a 15-year-old being arrested for running around with a large kitchen knife. So if the government does want to tackle this, it's going to take a bigger vision and more funding ultimately.
OK. We can see your extended 10-minute version of young gangs of Wolverhampton throughout the day here on Sky News, or on demand by scanning the QR code on your screen to watch Becky's full report and read more about the story on the Sky News website. Let's talk about a German court which has heard the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case has boasted he had abducted a young girl in Portugal in a story similar to the 2007 disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Shimon is here. There are some sort of gaps in that story that don't mean that it's not necessarily connected, but...
Yes, but this has come about because Christian B., the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann disappearance, is facing charges. He's currently on trial for unrelated charges, 3 counts of rape and some counts of exposing himself in front of children. But during this trial, one of his former cellmates is given evidence claiming that Christian B. has told him details about a case which he believes could be tied into the Madeleine McCann disappearance. But there are some discrepancies. So, for example, Lorinto Coding, the 50-year-old cellmate, has apparently said that Christine B had told him about a time that he was walking around an area that had quite a lot of hotels that lots of wealthy people were staying in. And on one occasion, he entered the window of a hotel, apparently looking for money, according to this witness, but instead took a child. But he also spoke about the fact that he didn't ever say that he had killed any children. And when he was asked about the age range of these children, he said around 9, 11, 12 or 13. Of course, we know Madeleine McCann was just 3 years old when she disappeared in 2007. That's why the defence lawyers for Christine B is saying that there are discrepancies, it doesn't add up, and that the story that's being told is constantly changing. So it does seem that prosecutors aren't any closer in finding out whether or not Christine B has any links to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, but there are some shocking allegations being made.
Absolutely interesting why he didn't say there were twin siblings in the same room at the same time, and also when the police arrived, the window was locked from the inside, but I'm sure they're looking at that. For now, Shaman, thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you. We're going to be speaking to the former head of the British Army's Chemical Weapons Unit as the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah escalates. We're joined by former politician turned author Lord Jeffrey Archer about his new book. And a praying otter will take you through the finalists of the funniest wildlife photos of the year.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello again, everybody. The UK is among several nations calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border to allow for negotiations to take place. Joined now by the former head of the British Army's Chemical Weapons Unit, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, who joins us, as you can see, via Zoom from Salisbury. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Some suggestions that Brits may have to be brought out of the region by sea if the airspace is closed. How far in advance is that something that you have to plan for?
Well, good morning, Kay. Thanks for having me. A great deal in advance. These non-combatant evacuation operations are really planned for all over the world where there are British citizens. And certainly in the Lebanon, I expect after the 7th of October last year, these plans have been gone through in great detail. Ideally, if that people need to be evacuated, they'd be taken by RAF transport aircraft from Beirut International Airport to Cyprus. As you say, it's looking like airspace might be closed. The other options are via helicopters from strips anywhere in Beirut or Lebanon, again to Cyprus, or probably in the worst case, people off the beaches to the Royal Navy ships that are based off the coast and then into Cyprus, but it would be planned in great detail. There are reports that there are a number of British citizens who are not in contact with the embassy. That was yesterday, but hopefully that has now been sorted out.
Are you, from where you're sitting in Salisbury, but obviously constantly monitoring the situation, are you expecting Israel to mount a ground invasion?
Well, there is, I think, as you said, the call for the 21-day ceasefire, I think, is a positive move. I think the fact the Iranians, who are absolutely key to this, let's not forget Hezbollah are their proxies, a terrorist group who they arm and support, calls for them to escalate. They seem to be pushing back from it. But I do think the Israelis, their military plan is to clear the border in order that their citizens who were displaced, about 60,000 of them after the 7th October attacks, can return to border areas. So militarily, it makes sense to me that they clear that border area in southern Lebanon, but I wouldn't expect that they would stay there too long. Really, they're trying to clear an area where line of sight, in other words, people, Hezbollah terrorists, are out of range for direct fire to those people who would move back in. So I think it's possible, but having said all that, there are still some positive vibes, coming out of New York and also coming out of Tehran too.
What about Hezbollah? Suggestions are that they have significant weaponry supplied to them by Iran that they have in tunnels underground. If we do see a reaction, a further reaction from Israel, what do you expect to happen to those weapons? Because, of course, they are being targeted at the moment.
Well, absolutely. I think I'd say two things. First of all, the extraordinary, audacious attack on their command and control networks last week, the pagers and the push-to-talk radios, has severely affected Hezbollah's ability to actually command and control their soldiers, and the Israelis know exactly who they are. So we've seen in the last few days lots of Hezbollah missiles being fired, but all pretty inaccurate. The one ballistic missile they fired allegedly at Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv was easily taken down. So I think there is very little effective action that Hezbollah can do. It would appear that the Israeli air defense and their Iron Dome system is working well. And I think their capabilities have been severely denuded. So I think, like everybody in the world, basically is hoping this ceasefire will be put in place soon, and then with Iranians stepping back, because they are the key, absolute key here, and they are. Don't forget as well that they also run Hamas down in Gaza, which is obviously the main reason that this dreadful conflict has developed. But I think Hezbollah, there is little they can do. So let's hope that we can get that ceasefire as soon as possible, for everybody's benefit in the Middle East.
OK, good to talk to you. Thank you. Thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Let me tell you about Sky News winning an International Emmy Award for its coverage of the Myanmar civil war.
We travelled in small convoys through the government army lines, using tracks and back roads.
There's our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, and the rest of the team. They went on a month-long undercover mission embedded with Myanmar's secretive resistance movement. At the ceremony, Stuart and the team joined on stage with the producer, Dominique Van Heerden, the camera operator, Richie Mockler, and the editor, Tom Su-Yek. Stuart thanked the people in Myanmar who allowed Sky News in, even if it meant they faced danger.
Myanmar is a very difficult place to go to, and so we have to thank the people who helped us get in. We can't really say who they are, but they know who they are. But without them, without the people of Myanmar who looked after us when we were there, it was incredible. But most of all, it has to go to the people the staff of the last hospital, the doctors, the nurses, and everyone who worked there. It was vitally important that they helped us film, but they were in so much danger because we were even there.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Politician turned author, Lord Jeffrey Archer, joins us in the studio to discuss his new book, An Eye for an Eye. Hello again, everybody. Oh, look at these in the front. An Eye for an Eye. That's the title of Lord Archer's latest book. As always, in his novels, he's drawn inspiration from real-life characters and events, and we'll talk about these guys in just... actually, just tell me how much they're worth.
Well, if it was real, that's a fake Rembrandt.
This one?
That would be worth $1 million. But this one is... Where's the other one gone? The... Independence.
Yes. This one?
Yes.
How much would that be worth?
If that had been written by Jefferson and not a forger, and it's somewhere out there, it would be worth 100 million.
Wow. How do you know it's not the real one?
We know because the forger kindly made it for me.
Tell me about the book.
So, the secret of these two things is that they are owned by a very distinguished lady, and her son is in jail. And along comes the wicked Mr. Faulkner and tries to get hold of this. She makes him pay $1 million for that. But then he gets hold of the Declaration, puts it up for sale in New York with Trump and Musk bidding for it, when my man, William Warwick, moves in.
Excellent. Based on a true story?
I met Mr. Hartley. It was a fascinating situation when I was searching for a new story. I met Mr. Hartley. Can you believe? Mr. Hartley, Mr. Willie Russell Hartley, lives in a home in Buckinghamshire where his family have lived for 500 years.
Wow.
So I went down to see him, and he showed me the letters he'd had from Jefferson. And Jefferson was a friend of his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was the only member of Parliament, Mr. Hartley MP, the only member of Parliament who thought the Declaration of Independence was a good thing. Breaking with America was a good thing. So he wasn't the most popular member of Parliament, but he became close friends of Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin. And from there, I got my story.
Oh, amazing. And of course, didn't we have a family recently who were knocking off this sort of stuff in their garden shed?
Yes, this sort of stuff, you're quite rightly. The Rembrandt is, the real thing is in Berlin. And I asked my man to do it. And I rang Johnny Van Heften, who's the nation's leading expert on Rembrandt, and said, could he have done a preliminary drawing? He said, unlikely, but he could have done it. So I went back to my forger and said, can you do a preliminary drawing of the great picture in Berlin? And he came back with that 14 weeks later. He came back. Oh, yes, it took him a long time. He said he had several failures. He said to me, the two hardest, I'll knock you off a Picasso, he said. I'll knock you off a Dali. But Rembrandt, he said, Rembrandt, Caravaggio, and Rubens, they take time.
Look, this is the result there. Look at that. Amazing. Who's going to win the Tory party leadership race?
Do you know, I dare to say it to an old pro like you, I feel out of date. When Margaret Thatcher stood down, it was between Douglas Hurd, Michael Heseltine, and John Major. And a very interesting contest it was. I supported John Major, and it was fascinating. Then the next one came, and then the next one came. I'm 84. I don't really have a view. So what I've decided is, as you know, 4 will go to the party conference. 2 will come out. They will go round the country. I'm going to watch the 2 who go round the country. They'll come to the Cambridge area, and then Mary and I will make a decision.
OK, what qualities do you need from the next Tory leader? Because it's been a bit of a bun fight.
And it's the lousiest job on earth. Leader of the opposition is a lousy job. It's very hard to make any impact. William Hague wrote a brilliant article in the Times saying that with Tony Blair was 49% popularity when he was Prime Minister. And William Hague said it was almost impossible to make a dent. Slight difference. The Labour Party only won 33.8% of the vote.
In the last
Slight
election.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
The current Prime Minister was -4, even on the day he became Prime Minister. Slight difference. He's currently -16. Slight difference. We have a budget on October the 30th. Though I would say, if you can get all the bad stuff out of the way in the first year, which is what Margaret Thatcher did, they don't remember 4 years later. So I suspect the Prime Minister and the Chancellor will be getting as much of the bad stuff out of the way now, and will build up for the next election. Not uncommon, we've all done it.
But what about the trust issue for Keir Starmer? I'm sure you're following that at the moment.
I think the mistake he made, which was interesting, was that sometimes the public can't understand a subject because it's immensely complicated. For example, I have to read very carefully which missiles will come out of the Ukraine to Russia, how far they will have to go, and why the Americans are being cautious, but the British appear... Now, that takes a lot of reading and a lot of interest. If you buy someone a suit, or you buy the wife a dress, the whole nation's got it in 30 seconds. And in politics, you really have to realise that the things that resonate with the public are the ones they can all understand. And clearly, Sue Gray, who was ever in charge, missed that.
But if you're taking money for suits, if you're taking money for your wife's frocks, then you're taking accommodation so that your son can study his GCSEs without the full glare of publicity, but then stay in that house, that flat, for another month afterwards. And if you then are in the same apartment and suggest that it's your own home during COVID rules when you should be staying at home, to the extent that you have pictures of your children behind you when you're doing that delivery, and that same bloke who's done all that for you then has access all areas to number 10 Downing Street, does that pass the sniff test?
It doesn't. But again, I come back to it's happened very early in the administration, and they've caught onto it, and it won't happen again. And I suspect, Kay, if you were interviewing me in 4 years' time and you asked that question, no one would remember. So they've got to hope this just goes away quietly, that in 4 years' time the world will have changed so much and other issues of real importance will be coming up. That's what you'll be interviewing.
But is there anything more important than trust in your leader?
Oh, no, I agree. I agree. Trust is very important. And dare I say, I don't think it's a mistake Margaret Thatcher or John Major would have made.
Why do you say that? You knew them very well, obviously.
I can actually point to an occasion. You may not be old enough. But
we both know I am, but let's press on.
When Margaret went to see Gorbachev, when Margaret Thatcher went to see Gorbachev in Russia, we had long discussions about the fact that she was going to be right across the world on television. And we went to Aquascutum, and she chose clothes she would wear. So she had a different outfit for the 3 days she was there. But I said to the owner of the company, Mr. Abrams, we want a bill. We expect you to send a bill. This is not free. And he did. He sent a bill, and the Prime Minister paid it. So I think, yes, that was a genuine difference.
What advice would you give to either Sue Gray or to the Prime Minister at the moment?
Well, I think it's been an unfortunate start, but they're both extremely bright. They'll have worked that out. I repeat, I don't think this is the discussion we'll be having in 4 years' time. This is a 5-year parliament. Margaret Thatcher always went May the year before she had to. That was her decision. They will have that privilege. They will be able to choose when to go. And that will be a big difference.
So did Rishi Sunak.
No, he didn't. He was boxed into a corner. If you have 4 prime ministers in 4 years, you get boxed into a corner. Don't forget, Margaret Thatcher governed for 11 years. She was not boxed into a corner. John Major went the whole way. He went the whole way because he believed things would be better at the end of the 5 years than they were. But frankly, by then, the British public were fed up with us. It wasn't his fault. They just had enough after 14 years. 17 years in all. Let's get rid of this lot, was their attitude, and who can blame them?
And is that what happened this time?
Yes, it did. That and the combination of 4 prime ministers in 4 years. Yes, the British public are tolerant to a degree, but 11 years was quite enough, and they were ready to get with us. And it's one of the joys of democracy. Putin has been in power for 22 years.
It's slightly different.
I have people who say he'll be there in 22 years' time.
I think he will if he wants to be. You say 4 prime ministers in 4 years. I think it was 3 prime ministers in 6 weeks, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the worst aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I come from an age when I got used to prime ministers being there for a long time. My first Prime Minister when I entered the House of Commons was Harold Wilson.
Huh?
He won 3 elections and stayed on. Ted Heath stayed on. Margaret Thatcher. I got used to it. And so when you suddenly have 3, we look like the Italians. I thought this has gone mad.
I noticed you didn't mention Lord Cameron then.
I thought that was a good decision. He's...
What, that you didn't mention him?
No. Clever. Sharp as ever. Sharp as ever. I thought making him Foreign Secretary was a good decision because once you've been Prime Minister, you have tremendous contacts across the world. You can pick up a phone to almost anyone. So it put him in a very strong position. And I think I was all for... I know a lot of people were against that. I was very pro that. I thought that was a good idea.
Who's going to be the US president?
Ow. It all depends on 7 states, as you well know.
Yep.
And Wisconsin will be the most important, Georgia the second most important, Philadelphia the third most important, because they're ridiculous electoral college. You will know that Mrs. Clinton beat Trump by 3 million votes, but lost because of the electoral college. She won, Biden won by 7 million votes. And Trump had the nerve to say, I won. He didn't win. But everything now rests on those 7 states in the Electoral College. And although she's gone 3.5% ahead in the national polls, that doesn't mean she'll win those 7 states. And you will have noticed that both Trump and Harris are only living in the... You never see them in California. You never see them in New York. You never see them in Texas. Why? Because they can't. Those states have already... They've been decided.
Yeah.
They've been decided.
And they're picked well with their picks for vice president as well, given the areas that are all important.
Yes, though I was surprised by Harris, a fascinating choice for vice president. I was surprised she didn't pick the governor who was key to one of the states. But that was her decision, and we shall see. I think it's the most fascinating election I've ever known. And the answer to your question is, I still think Trump will win. I think when it comes down... You see, the 3 things that matter in the United States of America at the moment, if you follow the polls, is that 41% think the economy is the most important thing, 19% think immigration's the most important thing, 14% think abortion's the most important. Well, the first 2 are very much in favour. The one big thing for Harris is, will women who are currently voting 62 to 38 against Trump, will that make the difference?
And before I let you go, Nigel Farage, would you have him to dinner? Would you have him to one of your shepherd's pie parties? I know that you don't have them anymore, but you get where I'm coming from.
No, I wouldn't. But I would... I watched his speech carefully last week. He is a rabble-rouser and a brilliant one. And that suggestion to a crowd of 4,000 that they should next attack the local elections was brilliant. He is an orator. He has charisma. He has nerve. I am frightened of him. If I was a Tory at the top at the moment, he'd be as big a fear for me as the Labour Party.
Might he ever be Prime Minister?
Not in my lifetime. But then I am 84.
You never mention it. Title of the book again? An Eye for an Eye.
An Eye for an Eye, out today. But then I always come on your show when it's out today.
You always come on us first as well, which is great. I look forward to seeing you very soon, my lord. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Still to come on The Breakfast Show. He's great, isn't he? A praying otter. Do you want to see it? We'll take you through the finalists of the funniest wildlife photos of the year.
They have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. शांति से इनको समझाओ वरना ये हम लोग It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On Board Lounge. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. We've been told in the last hour or so that there might be a 21-day ceasefire on the border between Israel and Lebanon, a deal that's been brokered at the UN General Assembly. Just hearing from the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, he says he's instructed his military to keep fighting at full power. That, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, he has not yet given his response to the US-French ceasefire proposal. As I said, it was negotiated at UNGA. He says, keep on fighting until I tell you differently. So we'll find out what's going on there. He's actually on his way to the UN General Assembly as we speak. Our own Prime Minister is there as well. So we'll have more on that throughout the course of the day here on Sky News. However, let's end the show on a high. It's been said that animals do the funniest things. Well, that's definitely true for this year's finalist of the Wildlife Comedy Photo Awards. Here to talk about it in more detail is the co-creator and photographer, and that's Tom Sullum. Hi, Tom, tell us about the photos that you've chosen and why you've chosen them.
Hi, Kate. Well, it's that time of year where we've got the funniest pictures of wildlife. We chose this 40 because this is probably the best entries we've had. We had more than 9,000 entries, and it was a slightly complicated process. And we've apologized to all those that didn't make the finals. But I think there's an excellent variety here this year. And if you're looking for narrative, you've got peacemaking polar bears. You've got some animals behaving very human-like. There's a cheetah hiding behind a tree, but standing on two legs while hiding behind the tree, which you got my kids laughing out loud. But it also kind of captures the human behavior that we love to see in the wildlife, which is really the point behind this competition, which is to show humor in beautiful wildlife photography, but also to try and get us humans to maybe show a bit more compassion and care towards the animal world, because we tend to treat it as a sort of second-rate thing quite often. So we use the humor to try and get through to ourselves as well as everybody else that we should be taking a bit more care from a conservation point of view.
How does this year's entries compare to last?
So this year, we've had Nikon sponsor us, and they are, as a result, I think has attracted some of the world's famous wildlife photographers. So the standard has gone through the roof in terms of photographic ability and technique. But amazingly, we're still looking at about 50% amateur photographers and 50% pro, which is a balance we want to try and hold on to, because it started very much with amateurs, and now it's obviously become a prize that wildlife photographers want to win around the world because it's such a popular competition. But we want to maintain this kind of control whereby amateurs can be involved and not feel like they haven't got a chance. In fact, last year's most popular picture was a 16-year-old's image of some angry birds. So it's a lovely bit of humanity that we can. It's not just for the pros. It's not the best photographer in the world that's going to win, because you can't plan when these funny moments are going to happen. That's very much down to some luck and obviously being in the right place, right time.
And just finally, Tom, how difficult is it to choose the winners? What's the process? I mean, you must have a lot of photographs to get through. Yeah,
there's an easy bit where there's pictures that are just not sharp. So that lot we can push out, but unfortunately, that's probably about 100 of the 9,000. Then there's a photographic element. So there's 3 or 4 photographers that make sure that every image is photographically strong, but also not AI, not fake, not photoshopped. So we have quite a good due diligence process to cover that. And we do get accused a lot on social media. People say, "Oh, this is just Photoshop or AI," but we do make sure it's all checked. And then we have about 20 judges, so we don't do all the work ourselves. And those judges all narrow it.
And we're out of time, so I'm going to have to interrupt you, but we've loved enjoying the pictures all morning. I have put forward my own entry. I know it's a little bit too late now, but I've been sharing it with my audience. This is a hyena tickling her baby to make him a laughing hyena. We're back next week. See you then. Bye-bye for now. Will's next.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.